Are your dogs boys or girls?
My dog's a girl.
You want to fuck him?
No, I don't want to have
Are you
sex.
describing who you want to fuck? You like to fuck girls?
Girls, humans. See, you're comparing apples and oranges, but my girl dog does like to have sex with male dogs to breed. Do you see?
All right, you sexualized your dog. Fantastic.
If you're not smart enough to know that, then what's even the point of talking to you about this subject? Because you don't even know what a lesbian is.
No, but you said...
What's a lesbian, Joe? Then you tell me what a lesbian is if you're so smart. No, you tell me. I'd like to know. No, you're so smart. You have all these logic games. Why don't you describe what a lesbian is?
Alex, so the group can have it.
Yeah, Joe, what's endlessly. A lesbian?
What's a lesbian?
I can't stop being transpositive. So if you need to remove me for being transpositive, I'll tell you that I'm going to approach the debate the same way for 3 hours because I refuse to be silenced.
Okay. So we're going to continue with the show. Welcome, everyone. I'm back from the beach in Kiev, ready to record today's stream. I want to welcome everybody to taking time off their Friday nights to do this. I appreciate that greatly. We're going to start off with everybody introducing themselves. I'm going to go into the rules, then we're going to go into the first topic. I'm going to start in the bottom left-hand corner with Rhizome. Could you introduce yourself?
Oh, yeah. I'm Rhizome, RHYZHOM on Twitch. Yeah, I'm just here to, I don't know, debate. What's up?
Next, I'm going to throw it over to James.
Mellow greetings, everybody. My name is James. I am from the internet. I discuss news, politics, and economics from the left over at twitch.tv/James from the internet. And tonight's password, tonight's secret word, the secret password for tonight is contempt. Stick around. I'm sure you're going to get to witness quite a bit of it.
I'm going to throw it over to Alex Stein, Primetime 99.
That's a good introduction. I'm on the grind all the time. Friday night is about to get freaky deaky. You know me on the Conspiracy Castle. I'm also a regular guest on the Tucker Carlson Show, or you like to call it the White Power Hour. We're ready to get down and dirty tonight, so let's do the dang thing, as they say.
I'm going to throw it over to Rob Noor.
Most people know me here. I just want to make a couple quick announcements. I lost my Discord channel, my YouTube channel, primarily because even though I use pronouns that people want and I have civil discussions with people in the trans community, apparently people in my community weren't. So I lost those channels and people think that I would be upset, but I've turned a new leaf. I am now the most trans positive person, that understands that every trans person is better than every cis person that's ever lived. I'm more than happy to debate these issues tonight. Please, trans community, don't cancel me on Twitch. I love you all so much. I'll be here for you. I promise. Thanks.
Finally got Rob. Thank goodness. He's speaking some facts for once. Gonna throw it over to Jangles.
Hi, everyone. My name is Justin. I go by Django Science Light on the internet. So I have a YouTube channel, a tiny one where I do video essays, debates, and I have a second channel where I try to ruin the very concept of comedy so no one ever laughs again, because laughter is a sin.
CTV.
Hello, everybody. I am critically thinking veteran, a Christian American constitutional conservative. I served 9 years on Ohio-class submarines as a machinist-made auxiliaryman. I have slept next to nuclear weapons, a nuclear reactor, and I fucked a mermaid. I've been to 45 of the 50 states. I've been to England, Scotland, and Wales, met thousands, tens of thousands of people on my journey, and I've had lots of deep diving and thought-provoking conversations with people from all types of various backgrounds. I love being a part of conversations and trying to understand the truth underneath all of the rhetoric that some people in politics like to just only have as a part of their stew. So I'm looking forward to having a great conversation tonight, especially considering that I'm the reigning Hippy Dippy champion. Wait a minute. I could take that meme serious if I actually had a fucking belt. If we get this fucking guy over here out of Ukraine and back over to the States and start actually doing the work of the business like he's supposed to, right, would have a belt. But until then, right, we're all just kind of sitting there fucking waiting. So anyway, good show tonight. We're going to have a great time. Looking forward to it.
Sorry, I gave your belt to Zelensky. I'm going to throw it over to Joe Lewis.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. If you like what you hear, as far as I say on my end, you can follow my Twitch channel at twitch.tv/Joe Lewis with 2 zeros or 2 O's, excuse me. And the Twitter is the same. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Dylan and Annabelle. Hope everything's going well.
Wonderful. And finally, we're going to throw it over to Taft Taj.
Thanks, Dylan. Yeah, Taft Taj. I post sexy pictures on the internet. I have a very complicated name, so you can call me April if that's easier, or just Taff if that's easier. Usually moderate center right, so looking forward to getting into conversation today.
Fantastic. Okay, so now we're going to go into the rules. First rule, of course, is that...
Wait, I got a question.
Okay, what's the question? Quick.
Are we planning the CTV Zelensky SummerSlam? Who's paying for me to get to Ukraine? I'm ready.
Okay, I'll bring you over. Okay, you can face Zelensky, and you can face him. Of course, you'll have to face him with the Ukrainian like SBU everywhere, though. Of course, so you'll be probably drugged.
Ben Stiller.
You'll be drugged. They'll like cut your Achilles heel before the fight, and Zelensky will inevitably win. But I can set that up. Okay, now into the rules. First rule: you buy Twitch TOS. We all want to keep our shows and our jobs, so I would appreciate if you guys did not do anything that would break Twitch TOS or get me banned. Next rule: if I'm talking, nobody else is talking. I'm not talking to give my opinion, even though I know everybody desperately wants it. I'm talking specifically just to moderate. Next rule is that during intros and outros, you do not interrupt people. That's supposed to be an uninterrupted period. Try to keep those short, like 30 seconds to like 45 seconds maximum. And if you find it hard to talk or like get into a conversation, raise your hand. I'll write your name down. Use it as a last resort. Please use it as a last resort, not a first resort, because it takes a while to get the conversation naturally over to you after you've raised your hand. And you will use people's proper pronouns here. I don't care what you do in your own show and your own business, but this is my platform, and I've made that one of the rules. And do not attack anybody's immutable characteristics. That means if somebody's like go after somebody's race, going after somebody's gender, stuff like that. I don't care if you insult people. Just call them a pig fucker, not a racial slur. Okay? We understand?
Yes.
Thank you. That would have been a great opportunity for somebody to call me a pig fucker, but nobody took advantage of it. Okay. Besides that, that's all the rules. Are there any questions? No?
No asshat. There's no questions.
Thank you, CTV. That's all of the introductory period. Oh, and one last thing. Do not bill us for any brain hemorrhages, brain damage, or internal bleeding you might get in from your brain from tonight's conversation. The opinions expressed here are not the opinions of Dylan Burns Incorporated or of the Ukrainian state. And lastly, please do not get all of your opinions from Twitch streamers on the internet. Do your own research. Go read other opinion pieces and other journals and reports and articles yourself on these issues. Do not trust anybody on here to give you your opinions. Unless somebody says otherwise, they're usually not an expert on the issue at hand, even if they have opinions on it. Okay, now that all that's out of the way, the first topic we're going to jump into is the Texas GOP's new platform. Recently, the Texas Republican Party released a new platform that's getting a lot of buzz due to the fact that it has things on it like marriages between a man and a woman. It has some parts in it that has to do with having it so adult children, quote unquote, their medical records being available to their parents, and a lot of other stuff that people are quite upset over and other people are defending. And so my question to everybody here is, since we talk usually on a national level, what do you think of the Texas GOP platform? Or if you want to, any other state platforms you'd like to talk about. But this is the one we're talking about now because it's the one that's getting all the attention. So we're going to throw it over first to, you know what? I'm going to throw it to Rob Noor to start us off.
Thank you. How long do we have? A minute to two?
Try to keep it to 30 to 45 seconds. We want to get.
Okay. Sure, no problem. I'll get through it as quick as possible. I'm glad that we're talking about this issue as opposed to left-wingers inciting an assassination attempt against a Supreme Court justice. I'm glad that almost every left Twitch streamer and elsewhere didn't talk about that. I'm glad it hasn't been talked about in the Hippy Dippy podcast. The only issue that matters is trans issues. I'd like to take a moment of silence for Pride Month. I haven't heard anyone talk about Pride Month anywhere. So it would be nice to have some representation on Twitch of Pride Month. So just a 5-second moment of silence. Okay, and now that we have that, I'm going to default to, I don't know what my positions are. All trans people, such as the noble Alex Stein, who identifies as trans, he obviously knows more than me. All trans people know more than the rest of us. So I think all cis people should take a backstage to this conversation and just leave the trans people talk.
Okay. Taft?
Okay, yeah, I think that the Texas GOP platform is a lot of meaningless culture war bullshit. It's not important. It's not a tactical victory that is going to allow for more victories in the future. It's another way for Republicans to cash in on the current events of the day to keep their jobs for a little bit longer. And it's not going to advance any meaningful long-term socio-political goal. What's going to happen is that the institutions and the culture in the country are going to continue moving left. And so really, I think that Texas GOP goals are not good policy. I mean, you can criticize them because they're just like, they're terrible policy. Like, we shouldn't be deciding what is medically viable based on opinion poll. That's a terrible idea. But also, I don't think they're good strategy from a right-wing perspective. I think if you're a right-winger, this is probably not what you want to be doing, even if it's politically expedient right now. It lets you keep your job a little bit longer.
Rhizome?
Yeah, basically, people who hold different systems or values exist in the state of Texas. People's beliefs don't determine what the best outcomes are, just as Taft is saying. So I'm really curious to hear what justifies someone's Christian beliefs and biblical values being imposed on people as a matter of law over their own.
Things moving a little bit right now. I'm just going to throw it over to Joe Lewis.
Yeah, maybe we can spend some time on the religious aspect of this document. Generally speaking, like, yeah, Texans aren't a monolith, so everybody's gonna have different perspectives. So I'm very curious to hear how mainly Republicans and right wingers feel about this bill, because or not bill, excuse me, this party platform, because this is their thing. So this is the thing that they'd be advocating for as Texans.
Jangles?
Yeah, so I don't want to go full on edgy atheist right out the gate because I forgot my fedora and you have to do that. But there's a section of this, like, God plays a central role in like the tenets and the driving motivation behind basically everything in this bill. They say the function of the government is not to grant rights, but to protect the inalienable God-given rights of life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness of all, including the unborn. So this is scary. All right, even if you're religious, like, who decides what God actually means? Who decides what is the will of the creator? The state does in this case. All right, that's why it's coming from the state and not from God himself. So we're going to create like a tiered system that doesn't have to be proven. You don't need evidence because God said so. And we see that all throughout the document. We see that motivation. We see why is marriage between a man and a woman? Because God said so. I don't have to prove that. That's all the proof I need. Why is patriotism important and should be indoctrinated into our children? Because, because that's what God wants. Why are trans people bad? And why is life-saving surgeries a mutilation? Because God said so. God made man and a woman. They don't have to justify these things. And not only that, we've created a tiered system where Christians get to discriminate against other people with different beliefs. However, Christians can never be discriminated against. It's a tiered system. Has no place in a free country.
Next is going to be CTV.
As I'm kind of looking over all this stuff for the Texas GOP that was linked in the Discord by Joe, right? So, Joe, thanks for linking that and the screenshots. I thought that was pretty good of you. As I read through this, it's going to be hard for Texas to get this thing to pass and actually be law, regardless of how people feel about it. I feel like a better direction would have been to try to remove the language of marriage from government at all, right? And redefine what it is that the government sanctions as a civil partnership. That'd get you a lot closer to the actual goal than, coming out and just blatantly saying, we oppose all efforts to validate transgender identity, right? Like, when you do that, you're saying that adults, right, that are, whether there's, you might believe that they're suffering from a mental illness, or they could actually be, going through an entirely different process in life, right? The trans individuals that I talk to, they understand exactly where I'm coming from when I have the conversation based in sex and not gender, and I don't get into the spectrums of things, right? Because, like, from what I understand there, it could pretty much be innumerable. So I feel like the reason why this is probably happening in Texas is because Texas has been majority conservative for a long ass time, and California has gotten so fucking bad that you got a lot of people that are moving from California and other parts of the nation to Texas, and now Texas has become kind of a melting pot of all the different peoples that are now, congregating in Texas, and you're going to end up having more conversations along these kinds of lines, especially since the conservative, say, like stronghold is already there in Texas because that was the majority population for the most recent period of time. So these things are going to keep popping up.
And Alex Stein.
Well, I was there. I'm actually a Texas state delegate, so I was actually a voting member, but I didn't necessarily vote on this stuff. But this shouldn't be surprising to people because this is just a party's outline of what they want to see in their party. This isn't, a representation of the state because obviously there's Democrats in this state. And so this really shouldn't be a surprise when you look at the amount of people that are, celebrating trans, and we celebrate, all of the ideologies that are the exact opposite of this. People in Texas are a little, cognizant of what's happening. You have people like Bill Maher saying the amount of kids that are on gender hormone therapy or have been, gender reassigned in Los Angeles compared to Ohio is like 10,000% more. So the pendulum is swinging in places that are conservative, and just because they have these viewpoints or they have these stated goals doesn't necessarily mean that any of that's ever going to even come into law. So it's just something they're striving for. And you have to remember, at the Texas GOP convention, these are the biggest conservative activists that are part of the party. They're the most involved. So of course, it's going to be the most extreme. And you have people that everybody knows Joe Biden got 81 million votes, fair and square. But a lot of those people, and he's the best president of all time, and the gas prices going up is totally Putin's fault. And everybody there will 100% agree on that's why inflation and the price of single family homes have gone up. We know that's all a good thing. That's all good for Americans. But you're going to have people in Texas that they're crazy. They're a bunch of crazy Texans. And this is another thing, is people are going to say Texas is ultra conservative. We've had governors, Ann Richards. We've had a lot of actually, it's been a liberal state in the past. So it's not as conservative as people think, but the pendulum is always going to swing. When we change the whole narrative that we currently follow because of social justice, people are going to get upset. People are going to get sick of it. They don't want their, they don't want their kids transition. So I think that's a big indication of how they feel. But like I said, this isn't the whole party's issue.
Okay, we're going to open it up to general conversation. Do your best not to get too out of control. We want
Dylan dog
at a time. Yeah, right.
James didn't go.
Oh, you're right. I'm very sorry, James from the internet. I ignored you. You can go.
I appreciate that, Dylan Burns. I'm sitting here with rapt attention and breathless anticipation to hear what the theocratic fascists of America are going to do after they come out with their big 12-point plan to convert everybody to Christianity at the point of a sword. I'm super excited to see who the conservatives in the Republican GOP named to be the first Shah of Texas in their theocratic fascist state. And of course, I am all about Texas announcing that they are going to secede from the nation because, frankly, this entire hemisphere would be a lot better off if we made Texas Mexico again.
Okay, now the dialogue is open. Who wants to start us off?
I think one of the trans people should start us off. It's only fair on Pride Month here.
Okay, sure.
Alex, you've identified as trans, correct, Alex?
All right, so CTV, really quick. You said that'll get you closer to the goal if you weren't so outright with it. Do you think that they should be moving in this direction though? That legislating towards their Christian beliefs is okay?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Because you said them being more palatable will get them closer to their goal, which is the abolition of gay marriage, which is making sure that you can convert trans people and shit.
Yeah, when it comes to government, people, society, a lot of people just have a knee-jerk reaction to we want fucking marriage to only mean between a man and a woman because it's spelled out in the Bible, and they attack it so directly, right? And then try to codify that without even bothering to think about how it actually impacts people that are not a part of their religion and their personal belief system, which is where I definitely understand why it is that, they feel the way that they do. And I feel the same exact way, right? Marriage is between a man and a woman, right? X, Y, and Z along the line. But when it comes to how you get that into government is, one, you just need to not use the word, right? Because the word itself, marriage, is what brings together what the idea of it is in the Christian faith. So from there, you understand that the government is only worried about the legal division of assets. So you just make the fucking word be the thing that the government's actually worried about because they don't actually care who actually, broke down the marriage, who was over here running around, this, that, and the other. They don't give a fuck. They're just like, oh, you want to get divorced? Okay, cool. 50% goes here, 50% goes there. We're done.
All right. So
I
does
mean,
that
the
mean that
problem
like
is like the
does that
initial
mean
beginning
CTV
of
that
the
you
government
think that
being
people should
involved.
be? Yeah, Toft, I was going down a line of questioning. So CTV, does that mean that you think that it's like okay for them to legislate in that way ultimately, as long as it's just not based in religious value? So if people vote for something that abolishes gay marriage, like you're totally fine with that direction. You think that would be good?
I think that all individuals have their own personal motivations for how they end up wanting the government to form at all, right? So, like, regardless of what someone's personal motivations are, the idea for people should be to try to figure out how to make the language of government as cohesive as possible between all the different peoples.
And so, do you think that is a very big mistake to make the religion centralized? You never have to prove what God says. You never have to prove even that God exists. And yet, that is beyond reproach in this declaration. That is beyond reproach in this document.
Look,
Well, it's
you'll
just
not-
their values. Like,
What-
this is how all legislation works. is
Yeah,
that
their
people
yeah, but
have
their values are-
values,
Yeah,
and
but
then they
their values-
legislate
Wait,
based off
let
of
them-
them.
Our values are intersubjective. Sorry.
Okay, just really quickly, just let people try to finish their statements, or at least the majority of their statements, before you interrupt them. CTV, I want you to respond because that was a question directed towards you. And we're going to go to Taff, and I saw Rob raise his hand.
Yeah, when it comes to understanding the language, right? Trying to, and what was it you just said there, Jangles? Just remind me.
I say, why? So, if it's based in this omnipresent thing, would you ever have to prove that God exists and these are his actual values?
Right. So, like, this is the way that I understand Constitution, Bible, right? Constitution is the legal framework that the framers who had already read the Bible and understood all of the philosophy there, right? And a philosophy from a lot of other places while you're sitting there shaking your head, James. Yes, they did, right? So they read all of these things and they knew all these things. They definitely understood markets. They had their own experience with fiat currency to begin with. And this is how we end up with the framework of the Constitution over here that was ratified in 1789, right? So when we understand that, and then you understand that these men grew up lifelong Christians, right, in faith, was reading the Bible, etc. Whenever they go to codify government, I understand that in this example that the Constitution is the legal framework and the Bible is the philosophy, right? So it's less about trying to understand hard truths as so much as the overarching message for one, what should the society look like whenever people are not judging one another, they're trying to get along, they're being very charitable to what people are saying, right?
A lot of
Versus-
words to say no.
So
Like,
Yeah,
what?
there's like 3,000 words in the Bible. None of them are. There's like 3,000 words in the Constitution. Literally, none of them are God.
yeah, so the
Literally none. Zero. Zip. Zilch. Nada. Not one fucking mention of the invisible, fake, fictional sky god who tells y'all to go do random shit, and then you try to cram his scientific word down all of our real throats. Zero times.
except
Zero.
except there's a lot of truth in what gets said anyway, right? Like you'd agree that people shouldn't murder each other, right? That's one of the
Yeah,
10
I think we
commandments.
could figure that one out without.
I mean, you
Yeah,
say that,
we can
and
figure
yet-
that out without the
you
sky
say-
god.
Yeah, but you say that from the perspective of 2,000 years forward in the future, right? Versus when it was understood back then. So this is an idea.
2,000
that we
years
understand
ago?
now.
Really?
It doesn't
When they
mean
wrote
that
the
everybody
Constitution?
understood it then. So unless
2,000
you,
years ago?
unless you have
wait,
like
wait.
fucking-
You gotta let CTV finish, and then I do want to get to Taft and Rob Noor because they've been on the waiting list.
Yeah, unless you got a time machine to be able to go back into the past, you can't speak to what people knew back then or what they had the ability to know, right? So that's right. That just understand that from the start. And then when you go to try to codify that in government today, I'm just trying to help you understand that one's a philosophy, the other one is a legal framework, and why cleaning up the language, right, and removing marriage from the language of government would go a lot further to create the kind of social cohesion that we're all looking for.
Jangles, I want to just do like a back and forth a little bit with you because I'm not exactly sure I totally understand your position. Is it that you think it's inherently wrong to legislate based on Christian or any other religious values?
No.
Or, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. No, I think any philosophy that you have that can go into your legislation. What's worrying about this is they have codified this to be not codified because it's not binding or anything, but it's beyond reproach. The government is simply a vehicle for a greater power that never has to be proven exists, and that is beyond reproach. The entire document, it is God gave the rights, and we're just there to protect
But
them.
it's
But
their
they never
platform, which makes
Yeah,
sense. Like if you had a Christian party, their platform would be, they would lay out their reasoning in Christian language. You would expect that from a Christian party. That
Yeah, of
seems
course.
reasonable to me. Like I think that
But-
you can disagree theistically and be like, I don't believe in God, so none of this argumentation applies
My
to me.
primary no, so well, it will apply if this became law in Texas. If it hopefully won't, but if it did, well, it would apply to you, wouldn't it?
What I mean by
And
apply,
what-
as in none of the reasoning is something that you find reasonable. That's what I mean by apply.
And this is what's worrying. It's because it's beyond reproach. If God says so, God is omnipotent, God is infallible. There is no democratic process that can change that. Our word, our
No, the
states,
democratic
our
process would
desires
be voting.
doesn't have anything to do with what God's natural will is, right? And you never have to discuss that. You never have to demonstrate why marriage should be between a man and a woman. You never have to demonstrate beyond because God says so. Can you prove God said that? You can't. Well, take my word for it. Essentially, it's a tautology.
Yeah,
God
your
is
point
the
is that
state.
it's
The
hard
state
to
decides.
argue with these
No.
people because these people have fundamental axiomatic beliefs,
That they
assumptions.
never have to prove.
Yeah, that you can't
No, Jangles,
break them out of. But that's true of everybody. Everybody has
No.
fundamental axiomatic assumptions.
everything. No, all of our actual rights are intersubjective. The state does decide what our rights are.
No,
What
but
is the power
everyone,
beyond that?
listen, everyone in this conversation has axiomatic values. They have certain things that they assume are good or bad or true or
But how malleable
false.
are they?
It depends on the person, but I think that most people will invent, logical constructions for reasoning out their values. Christians do this too, to varying degrees. But
Hey, of
ultimately,
course.
everyone has these basic assumptions, right?
Yeah.
Even Kant had these assumptions. Kant had this belief that he had reasoned out his logical system. And yet Kant even said that if God came to him and said that the categorical imperative was wrong, he would know that it was a false God because God would only tell the truth. And yet Kant also believed that certain races were inferior, right? So we know that ultimately his logical reasoning was really based more fundamentally on certain disgust responses and internal brain mechanisms that he had. So even though people will dress up their beliefs with logic, what we're really talking about is these fundamental assumptions. Everyone
My
has
problem-
them, and it's
yeah, I know.
reasonable to expect people to legislate based off of them.
My problem isn't that people have different axiomatic belief systems than I do. My problem is that they have encoded this into an infallible. You cannot question it. We have intersubjective belief. It's based on there is no
Yeah,
mutual.
but
Let's
I
go
think
back and forth if we base it on this.
Wait,
If
Yeah,
we
I
go back
think
and
what
forth, if we
Jangles is
agree that we-
saying, if I can
Wait,
just
wait, one
try to
second.
make it a little more clear. Yeah.
One
go on.
second. Rob has been waiting. I want
I
to make
think
sure
you're
he-
right, but it's such a, I don't know, it's such a moot point. It's so obvious, but
I
also
just feel like
Wait.
it's obtuse.
Can we please throw it over to
It's
Rob?
obtuse.
Yeah, I want to throw it
Yeah,
to Rob.
Jangles, I think you're being obtuse.
I mean, if we
wait,
can
wait,
return to
wait,
that
wait,
after
wait,
Rob,
wait, wait,
I'm just
yes.
saying if we can return
Okay.
to it after Rob, that'd be cool. I have a response, but yeah, go
Okay,
for it, Rob.
Rob.
Okay, I can clarify too.
The first thing I was going to say is my audience was saying they were having trouble hearing Jangles, but I think I figured out how to turn up individuals' microphones. So I think we're good now, Jangles. But I don't know if other people were having trouble hearing. I just wanted to say, and by all means, no one has to answer this, but just for the sake of inclusivity and sort of understanding where we are on this panel, because I don't know everyone, can people let me know if you identify as trans? I know Alexa Primestein 99 always on the grind does. Is there anyone else that identifies as trans on the panel?
yeah, Rob, I'm trans.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
me
so
too.
I
If
just
you
wanted to
want to
say-
count NBs, so go for it.
Trans, but not transgender. Is it,
Well, that
Rising?
technically,
'Cause
I'm
I just
not
wanted to
cis
say,
technically,
Yeah,
so it's up to
okay.
you what you want to
Wait,
clarify
how are you
that.
not cis? How are you not cis again? I would like the clarification.
Okay, this is okay. First of all, I don't understand why people's personal identity are being roped into any kind of arguments right now at all.
What?
He wants to
Secondly,
be Mimi again.
I know he just
No,
wants
no,
like
no.
to do the label thing, but then
No,
okay,
no.
so okay, Rob. Regardless, I'm going to answer the question for
How are you
Alex.
not
Okay,
cisgender?
I'm
That's
going to
all I'm
answer the
asking.
question for you, Alex. Holy shit, because I don't consider myself a dude.
Well,
I'm
isn't
just
a
telling you
dude
what
a
the
hair-
literal answer
Hold on,
is.
hold on, hold on. Isn't a dude a hair on an elephant's ass?
Okay, can we just be? I want to be a little frank here.
What is this
I wanna-
conversation?
I'm sure we can make a panel topic of what's Rhizome's true gender another day. Okay, I do want to make sure we stay on the Texas GOP platform.
I mean, we can go down and I'll be a
How about we
punching
just
bag for their,
debate specific
transphobia
points,
if
right?
they want. Like, it's fine.
I'm
I
not
think that would be good,
transphobic.
'cause,
I'm
like,
just saying
I wanna
you're a
debate-
large
Wait,
man.
man. I mean, isn't
This
that
is
obvious?
trans related, so okay, it's a good jumping
Right.
off point. In the platform, one of the things they say is that they want to limit access to hormone transition up to 21. I'm more on the libertarian side of these things. I think that the government needs a really good reason to regulate what adults are putting in their bodies, and I don't think that that reasoning exists for hormones or medical blockers, which aren't proven to have particularly negative effects. I think that, again, I'm more on the libertarian side of this. So I think that even with like other kinds of drugs, I think it's appropriate for people to be able to choose what they put in their bodies.
I want to jump in on
Taftash,
this, and
what
it'll
about
help me
guns?
clarify my
Do you
previous
need to be-
points.
Wait, do you need to be 21 to have a handgun, Taftash? Do you believe that?
I don't know what the law is in Texas, but I think it's reasonable to limit guns. Yeah.
I
In
actually have
fact,
a,
like personally, I
Guns,
think
but
that
not
like
gender. Okay.
so.
I'm just trying to get a
Okay,
clarification.
hold on. I mean, I could give like my full gun stance because I think it's a little.
or
bit
we can talk about what you
interesting.
just talked about. Let's stay on topic. I can
Okay.
jump off of that, and I can better explain what my previous position was. Yeah, but here's the thing: you're making the assumption that the conversation is how do we best serve trans people? How do we best serve trans kids? That's a great discussion to have. That's not where they are, right? Because God made man, God made woman in His image. So that's not the discussion.
Yeah,
The
and so
discussion is
that's why
you can
I'm arguing
never-
it based on principles of liberty, right? I'm not arguing about like the medical efficacy, though I could go down that road with them. I've researched this a lot, but I'm trying to make an argument towards Texas Republicans who I know have these principles, these like cowboy principles of liberty, right? I think that they are going to be receptive to a message that is based more on principles than in the weeds with medical studies.
And I agree, that's very, very valuable. However, a lot of people are not like that. We're discussing particularly the GOP position here, their GOP platform. And that's why it's concerning. I know I've learned better. I have a ton of studies. I have entire research documents, 70 fucking studies on supporting like trans positive stuff. I've learned. I haven't used it in the past like 5 debates I've had with trans folks because they don't care. It's not going to convince them. Evidence did not lead them to their positions, so evidence will not convince them from their positions. We have to push so far back that where I want to challenge their fucking assumptions. You have to prove why you believe the things you do, and it can't just be circular. It can't just be I believe it because God said so. How do you know what God says? Because I believe that's what He says.
So I don't think you're going to convince them out
Jangles
of
is saying
theism.
that things are intersubjectively able to be proven when you make good arguments for legislation. Like, hey, this is going to work for most people because this is their reality. This is the reality we experience. Like most people fall in love, they want to get married. Like intersubjectively, that's true, right? But we don't just assert like gender is biological and like don't have a foundation for that when we can do some sort of intersubjective analysis and look at like how that concept works in reality. Or like
I
if we
don't think
legislate
that he's
against it.
saying that. I think that Jingo's is kind of saying the opposite. You can't use reason to like logic these people out of their positions.
No. I'm saying.
So I think the reason or like the way that you get people in Texas to change their views on gay or trans people is with something like exposure, right?
No,
so,
Ryzen was right. That is what I was saying.
Oh,
we
okay.
we determine like rights and laws. We determine them intersubjectively. That's all you can do. The
What do you
alternative
mean
would
when you
be
say intersubjectively? Just real quick.
I mean, we all something exists like social constructs. Things exist because we all agree, or most of us agree that they exist. That's the best we can do. The alternative would be objective, and that doesn't exist. And that's what they're claiming. It's objective. It's beyond question. It exists. These rights exist outside of humans to observe them. And so, yeah, we do determine rights intersubjectively, and therefore we determine laws and morality intersubjectively. That's how we do it. But
Jangles is saying the closest we can get to understanding reality is by looking at multiple people's understandings of reality and try and like understand what they experience and go through and like a mass amalgam.
Okay, but I think
if I may.
Go ahead,
I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. Please go. Okay, if I may. I don't know that quite works, this idea that objectivity doesn't exist and intersubjectivity is what we should strive for, because how do we decide on that intersubjectivity? For example, at one point it was intersubjective, the heinous, bigoted, grotesque belief that your genitalia had something to do with your gender. It's fucking bigoted. I can't believe that we live in a society that just a couple years ago believed that. They thought that if you were born with a penis, that meant you were a boy. That's disgusting. And I'm glad that we could now get over that. But intersubjectively, that's what most people thought. Intersubjectively, most people thought that we shouldn't be teaching gender ideology and sexuality to children, such as kindergartners. But I could see that that was wrong. I don't want to say that that's the belief to have because I'll get kicked off of Twitch. So now I understand that actually all we should do, all of us here, as opposed to a standard of objectivity or intersubjectivity, the best we could do is understand that some people are better than others, and those people are transgender people. And that's why I think Jangles and Rhizome need to stop stop sort of interrupting and allow the trans people in this panel to talk about their lived experience, because that's all that really matters. So I'd like to hear from Alexa and Tad.
You don't give a shit about truth. This
really
is what you do.
Point of
I would
order.
like to hear what they say. I don't want to get kicked off Twitch. So
Okay, what's the
point of order?
Yeah.
Point of order. Rob is going off on his tirade about, you know, people identifying as trans and children. Rob, just a reminder, parents have to take their sons and then go, oh no, it's a girl, so that the rest of your Christian cult doesn't genitally maim them a month after they're born, all in the name of Christ. Just quick reminder there for you.
If I can respond,
hashtag
I don't
save the skin.
Sure. If I could respond, I think you have me misidentified with someone else. I think that the best thing to do. No, listen, I agree with you. I think it's heinous. But why? Where am I part of a Christian cult? Where have I ever said that? So I don't think that your criticism of me. I think that this discussion that we're having now of like 3-year-olds being able to determine like their gender and stuff, I don't think that goes far enough. I think our society will not be a healthy society until we assume that the genitals that we see on every baby, that their gender is the opposite. So if you're born
Rob, are
with
you
a
just
penis,
interested in
the
shadowboxing
default,
all night,
the
dude?
default should be to assume that they're women. I don't understand why people ask, like they want to kick you off if you're not trans positive enough. And then when a real conservative like me becomes more trans positive, people refuse to accept. I think maybe you all aren't the trans allies that you think you are, because when someone takes this to its logical conclusion, it is more trans positive. You just want to say that I shouldn't be saying the things I'm saying. Can anyone give me a reason why, if we should have subject normativity and there is no such thing as objectivity, why we should identify any children whatsoever as a gender, and why it wouldn't be better to identify, if we are going to identify, as the opposite gender? Can anyone give me an inner subjective reason why that's not the case?
I have a clarifying question
I can
for
make
Alex.
Wait, okay, okay. Taft, was that a response to Rob? Because if it is, I'll let you go first. Then we got to go to Joe Lewis because he hasn't really had much speaking time.
I mean, I think it's interesting that Jangles and Rhizome both bring up this intersubjectivity idea, because I agree fundamentally that I don't think that individuals just working off of their own brain and their own, internal preconceptions can know everything about what is right and the best way to legislate or act morally. And so,
or just to put an asterisk on that, like could know what is the most realistic picture of
reality,
society. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I agree, absolutely. And so I think a big problem with, deriving your entire worldview, individually, is it becomes sort of solipsistic. It becomes sort of narcissistic. And I think that a good alternative is to defer in some way to the culture and tradition that you exist in.
Means.
Yeah, I'm making an argument for intersubjectivity.
I think Toft is on our page, man.
Well, I'm saying that there's an intersubjective argument for deferring to religion and to culture. And so I think that these Christians in Texas will make the same argument to you. And they will say things like, well, the reason we hold these truths and these values from a secular reasoning is because we are not omniscient ourselves. And so we have to defer to the wisdom of other generations and understand that we might get things wrong in our current day, just because as individuals we're prone to bias.
The issue there is that they would privilege certain perspectives over others as being more real or speaking like truth to who they are, their identity, right?
Yeah, you were.
I think that's true.
You went into a big problem. Everyone does it to an extent, but Christians will work backwards. Like there's a famous Ben Shapiro quote says, "I don't think God makes stupid laws, so there must be a reason why this thing is true." It's working backwards. You decide the truth, and then you look for evidence. Then you look for
Christian either.
I know, but he's religious.
He's conveniently Christian.
He is.
I think that the impulse internally for religion is very normal. Everyone's sort of religious.
You guys are saying that Ben Shapiro has Christian values when he's so clearly a Jew. Are you serious?
Judeo-Christian values, and it was more
he
of a
means religious. He said Christian. He means religious.
You guys keep on bashing Christianity. What does Islam think of
same thing?
People?
Do you think
we shouldn't legislate based on Islamic religion?
Yeah, do you think you had got you there?
Well, I'm just saying, it's just funny. It sounds like you know what you're talking about, but you don't even know what religion Ben Shapiro is. So it's just, I don't.
We shouldn't legislate against anyone's
He said
religion.
Christian. He means just religious. Okay.
Judeo-Christian. His religious argument was obviously
the
against
Bible.
religious.
He doesn't follow the Bible, bud.
Yeah, we corrected and we moved on. Easy. All right, Toft, continue.
Okay.
Anyways, I think that Jingle's point is fundamentally about it's very hard to assail these values because they're very deeply held, and they're held in a kind of axiomatic assumptive way where they're not derived logically. So I think that the best way to argue with these people is to look at other values that they also have, right, that aren't derived from the same thing. So I think that Texan Republicans are also very libertarian in a lot of ways. So I think that the way that you convince people is by looking at their value structure and looking at values they hold and finding out how certain values play off of each other and how they conflict. And by appealing to one value and saying, you hold this as a value, well, this value would indicate that you believe adults should have a certain liberty over what they do with their body. Doesn't it make sense to allow people over 18 to access these hormones? So that's how you move them away from like the 21 position. And I think that's a good way. That's a good.
I agree.
Wait, Jangles. Joe Lewis has been waiting for a very long time. I'll make sure he gets to ask Alex Stein his question.
I have a clarifying question for Alex.
Yes.
Should the Bible be the central moral and ethical text that guides individuals through legislation in America?
No.
Why do you believe that?
I believe in separation of church and state.
And there's lots of different people in America.
I was asking Alex, thank you. Do you think that what do you believe within that? Because you mentioned you had a problem with the observation of religion. I'm trying to see where exactly you fall on that. Because you mentioned you're a Texas delegate, you said, or something like that in your opening? Okay. Gotcha. So what exactly do you fall in terms of religion as it relates to the party platform?
As a gender fluid man, I don't know why we're all about labels and identity all of a sudden. So now, I mean, I don't really appreciate that. But I believe that we didn't evolve from pond scum. I don't think that the Big Bang created everything. I don't think everything came from nothing. So I believe that there is, obviously, as you guys like to call it, a man in the sky. I do believe there is some sort of creator. That's just what I personally feel like. Now, I don't necessarily like organized religion, only because I think it can be corrupted by man. So I don't trust man. So if you're trying to put me in like a certain ideology, I was baptized a Christian, but I don't necessarily like all the pulpit pimps. I don't like the Joel Osteens. I don't like a lot of people in the Catholic Church that molested boys and then covered it up. So I'm gender fluid, dog, and I'm kind of religious fluid. So I believe in God. I believe in the Creator, but I think we should take parts of all religions and follow them. I think that's good to think that after this life we do go somewhere and that we're held accountable for our actions here on Earth.
I believe.
If I can
thank
rip
you
on
for
that
that
real quick.
answer. I have one more follow up. With that in mind, so you mentioned the idea that you don't believe in organized religion. Like, is that a correct thing to say? I just want to make sure I heard that.
I mean, I believe in it. I just don't ascribe to it, I guess.
Got yeah. That makes sense. Do you feel that within the party platform of the GOP that they have some sort of centralization of religious thought?
Yeah, I mean, in the conservative movement, I think the majority of them would be considered Christian. But you'd be surprised when you go to when you go there, a lot of delegates are gay, a lot of the delegates are Jewish, a lot of the delegates. I didn't see a lot of Muslim, but there's a lot of Jewish conservatives. So it's not fair to label them all Christian. There's actually a pretty good amount of Jews.
Right, but correct me if I'm wrong. It appeared like within the party platform, it was pretty centered around sort of Christian ideals and Christian values. And I'm wondering how you feel about like sort of the centralization of religion within a document.
Well, I mean, honest to God, I mean, I think Christianity is pretty good. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily bad to I mean, I know you guys hate it, but I don't think it's necessarily bad. So a lot of people that are Christians, I think they have morals and they do believe that their actions have consequences later on in life. So I don't think it's necessarily bad that they use the scripture to make decisions, but I do think there should be a separation of church and state and that we can't make all decisions based on the Bible.
Gotcha.
If I could rip off something that you said there, like this idea of the man in the sky, I find that gendered language to be disgusting as well. First off, even if we're no, I mean, as a trans person, you're absolutely. I understand your brain is bigger than mine. I don't comprehend, but I'm just saying this: where there is no proof, even if we're using Christianity, right? Like I never understood, even before I had my trans positives turn. I think that there's a Christian case for gay marriage and things like that. I always felt that way. We don't even have proof, by the way, and I am sincere about that, but we don't even have proof that Jesus himself wasn't transgender. He could have gone through gender affirmation therapy. He could have had hormone blockers for all we know. He could have had surgery. We don't know. The records of back then aren't really
want to keep this on the rails,
right?
Or no?
And Jangles, and I wanted to talk to you specifically with this idea. I'm still trying to struggle with this idea of subjectivity, sort of, what did you call it? Like a collective subjectivity? What was the word?
Intersubjectivity.
Intersubjectivity, right? I want to understand how that doesn't lead to a tyranny of democracy, right? That if 51% believe something, that's because there seems to be a lot of questions here
because
about where do we get our
based
sort of
on how many perspectives
please,
are out there.
Rise on. I don't mind
I'm just
you.
keeping
I don't
it
mind
simple
you
for you,
interrupting.
so you don't need to
I
keep
got
going.
you. I don't
too
mind
long.
you. I don't mind you
Well, there's your
interrupting me
answer.
as
So
much.
now we can move forward.
But you and Joe interrupting trans people, I find to be disgusting. As cis people, I think you need to take a back seat. You can interrupt me, that's no problem. But I just noticed that. Anyways, the question I have is this: we have to have a value system that comes from somewhere, and if it's not objective truth, then there's going to be somewhere that it comes from. So I want to understand. I'll have a quick response to this, but I just want to understand where you all's value system comes from, Rhizone and Jangles.
Oh, I just know everything's true.
Okay,
everything I believe is
Rhizone?
correct.
Not
I'm
a
not even
religious
appealing for
statement, by
my
the
own
way.
moral system over others. I'm saying somebody shouldn't be able to just impose theirs based on their own understanding of the world onto other people. That's all I'm saying.
But if there's no such,
What do you think
if there's no such thing as
legislation
if there's no such thing as
legislation
objectivity,
is that, but it's based on us consensus voting towards it or like into it.
Yeah, so you
And, like,
agree
having
that
some
if
kind
it's
of, like,
by
belief that we can
consensus of
speak
the
to that.
community, it's legitimate to
Say it
impose
again?
moral. You believe that if it's by consensus of the community, it's legitimate to impose moral beliefs.
So there's two things happening, right? You can, yeah, sure. Somebody can vote something in and it could have a bad epistemological foundation. I'm advocating that we should have a better epistemological foundation for the beliefs that we legislate into actual codified law.
But what is that foundation?
An intersubjective understanding of what people experience or what reality is.
See, I disagree, and let me say why. Because I think that once you say the objective doesn't exist, the intersubjectivity means that there would be sort of tyranny of a majority. So I think that we do have to understand objectivity does exist, and the objective truth is trans people are better than cis people, and only their opinion should matter when it comes to
objectivity can
legislating.
exist? What objective truths can we grasp as humans?
Well, he
that
said
trans
very
people
clearly.
are better than cis people.
No,
That's
very
the
clearly. He
objective.
said, I think. So he knows that objective truth doesn't exist. That's why he said, I think.
No, it does.
Speaking of
There is an objective truth. Trans people are better than cis people in every single way.
Speaking of truth, I have something that was kind of on my mind that Alex mentioned concerning the 2020 election, because within the party platform, there were very clear resolutions. And this is a question, I guess, to Alex and CTV as well, because I'm curious about his thoughts on this. Within the party platform, it overtly rejects the certification of the results of the 2020 election. So my question is, how do you feel GOP members in Texas should navigate around that if that is their party platform?
If I'll go, I mean, like I said earlier, these are the most conservative part of the party. Like, John Cornyn got universally booed, but actually he's like, I think he won by 74% of his vote. And I don't think anybody at that convention would have voted for him. And then I think it was, I forget, not Abbott, but I forget. I'm just saying that's not the best representation of the entire party. These are the people that are, most involved. So for these people, they definitely probably would disagree that, 81 million votes were cast in
right. But my
favor.
question is, how do you feel like if you are a member of the GOP in Texas that you should navigate around this? Because, like, let's say you believe that the election was properly certified, because you mentioned that earlier, but how do you navigate that from a level of, like, political praxis of, like, because you will have people who are Republican who will say that they reject the results of the election. So my question is, how would you navigate around those people who believe?
How did you navigate all the people that said the election was stolen from Hillary in 2016?
That's not the question that I'm asking.
I'm saying I'll do it the same way that you navigate
around
the same
that?
way you navigated around those people. I navigate around them the exact same way.
So what was the way that you navigated?
What was the way that you navigated?
Yeah,
I'm asking how he would. I'm just asking how you navigate
and he's
around that.
clearly asking you how you would. So now you got me asking how the fuck
No,
you
but
would, because
I'll
I'm fucking
gladly-
curious.
Christ.
I'll
Okay,
gladly-
okay.
Let me
Okay.
turn this bitch down.
Okay, what?
I did answer.
y'all-
I said it navigated exactly like you.
So you didn't
What?
answer. Have a spine.
It's an
Answer the question.
I have a
That's an
spine.
answer.
I'm telling you, I navigated the same exact way that they navigated the 2016
is?
election when everybody
Well,
said,
what is the
Well,
way
which
that
is-
you navigated?
We can move
yeah,
off of
everybody
that if
said
he
it was
doesn't wanna
stolen from
answer.
Hillary. So I'm
Everybody?
doing the exact same way.
We can move
Yeah,
off of that. if he doesn't
you're
wanna
telling
answer.
me
I'm okay
that
with
universally people on the left didn't think that the election was stolen from Hillary? Is that
I'd
what
be
you're
really
trying to say?
interested if an entire state made it their the Democrats made it their party platform.
Well,
in the state.
in fairness, the Democrats did make it their platform. They had a coup against Trump for 4 years where they thought that the election was stolen. That was
Really?
concocted by
Show me the
Hillary
party
actually
platform.
colluding. Sure. It was concocted. It doesn't matter if it was on the platform. It's even worse because it wasn't just a platform. It was enacted. Hillary Clinton did collude with a known Russian spy, and the FBI accepted that and spied on Trump and engaged in a coup for 4 years. But it doesn't matter because the point is, with this line of questioning...
Can we please bring it back to the actual, like, party platform? If not, we're just going to move on. We're going to skip this.
I mean, I'm cool.
With the party platform specifically, with this question, like, people could have these sort of questions, like, in their party platform. They could say, we don't, in this particular state, we don't certify electors. There were other people like Benny Johnson that said that they didn't certify electors in the 2016 election. You had the Democratic Party. I don't know if it was written into their platform, but they all agreed with Stacey Abrams that the election was stolen from her. I just wanted to make this point, much like we have to be very careful around these conversations on gender and things like that, because nobly Twitch will censor anyone that says things they don't like. Similarly, Alexa has to be very careful about talking about whether or not the election was accurate in 2020, because he could be, or she, or whatever pronoun you're choosing to use today, could be banned off YouTube if they say anything. So the navigation will be that we both firmly, I can tell you right now, I firmly believe whatever the people at Twitch and YouTube tell me I need to believe to keep my channel. That's what I firmly believe.
It's a real shame that we've lost this kind of content from the internet with Rob getting banned. Don't you? Wouldn't you love to have more of this?
I actually agree with Rob. Whatever YouTube says, I agree with.
The question that I have but then you said, like, however I navigated, you navigated. So I'll ask it again. If you don't want to answer it, that's fine. But how do you believe that you, as someone who believed that the election was properly certified, should navigate around other Republicans who believe that the election was not properly certified?
Well,
how
Joe,
do you navigate around those individuals?
Joe, it's very easy. I'm very nice.
One at a time, please.
Look, Joe.
I specifically asked this question to Alex, so I'd love to answer from the answer first. And then I'm glad to hear.
But I feel like we're going in circles, so I just want to ask, right, Joe, you're leading it.
CTV.
I'll answer it.
The question is directed towards somebody, and I think that person should be allowed to answer.
I just want Joe to. I want his advice. I want his fucking advice.
CTV.
He's obviously has his own fucking idea.
I gotta throw.
Well, I'd like to answer. I'd like to answer. So, Joe, I don't know if you watch any of my content, but at the latest GOP convention, I not only called out Ted Cruz, I called out Dan Crenshaw, that were both conservative. So the thing is, the difference between me and you is I don't believe in identity politics. I don't use my whole identity on one party, on one platform. I don't believe in that. So what I do is I treat people. I'll answer it. I treat people nice and with respect. I don't have to agree with everybody. And there's people that I think are hypocritical. I call them out. So that's what I do, bud. Answer.
Okay, so
God bless YouTube.
Jang-a-lang, I'm answered. Do you like that answer?
Yeah, but I guess
God bless YouTube and Twitch for telling us what we have to think.
The thing that I'm kind of stuck on is that these are individuals who are, I would argue, at least in my state, are quite aggressive about sort of the ideas, not only of the presidential election.
And the people on the left aren't aggressive? People on the left aren't aggressive?
Is it possible for you to do anything without whataboutism? Can you just answer
no,
a question
I'm just
directly
asking.
of what you think without whataboutism?
Hey, stop.
People on the right are aggressive? I don't think that's fair.
No, that wasn't what I said. Sure.
Okay, let me be clear. If somebody's asking a question, please allow them to finish said question before jumping, okay? Joe Lewis, please finish the question.
Yeah, so the thing that I'm stuck on, and again, I'm not trying to paint that all Republicans believe this, but it has been shown, because it did cost Jack Ciattarelli a very large electorate of voters in my state, that when he took a hard stance against that the election was properly certified and that the election was valid, he got a lot of pushback from Republicans who side with Donald Trump and more on the farther right. And he navigated it in a particular way. Granted, that cost him the election in certain votes in certain aspect. I'm just trying to understand how you navigate around those people who would believe contradictory to your belief in this case, and then like how you feel Texas GOP can navigate around that broadly. That's all I'm trying to ask here. Is that clear? Or
no, that's clear. And I believe in individualism. I don't, like I said, just earlier, I don't believe in identity politics. So I believe people are allowed to have different, schools of thought within a party. So I would just encourage them to be friendly and be nice and, show love and spread love instead of hate. That's how I would navigate around it.
Okay,
Joe, what's your advice? What's your advice on how to solve that? What's your advice, Joe?
I'm not asking for advice, which is asking.
So you just wasted this whole fucking time for the last 10, 15 fucking minutes so we could do a circle jerk around this fucking idea that you got. It wasted everybody's fucking time. It's been nothing but fucking irritating.
Did you want to
tell us what you think then, CTV?
Because I mentioned, Dylan mentioned,
CTV, where are you at
you wanted to answer as well. So what's your answer to that?
CTV.
I mean,
I'll ask
can
the
I
question
answer
then.
it as well?
Oh, sorry,
Well,
sorry. Tom.
I
If
wanted
you'd
to
like
make
to.
sure, like, CTV, did you want to answer the question or no?
I want this conversation to keep moving instead of just staying in this Joe circle jerk where he doesn't answer any part of anything. He just wants to present these grand ideas and then try to put somebody boxed into a corner, right? That's all fucking disingenuous bullshit, and I've about had my fucking fill of it. That's where
I've
we're
asked
at.
2 questions the entire night.
Joe, if I could real quick, like if I
That's not
asked
going
you
to
a
answer
question
though, right?
and I had a feeling that you were only allowed to give one answer, right? Because the primary platform you're on would ban you if you gave a different answer. Do you think it would be helpful to keep asking the same question over and over again?
Why did you think that my question was a bannable offense?
Because if for example, if Alex would say, hypothetically, I know he wouldn't, or she, or whatever pronouns they're using today, wouldn't believe this, right? But if they did believe, I believe the election was stolen, which I'm not saying. I would never say such a thing. You can't say that sort of thing online. I wouldn't say that. YouTube knows better than us. If he, she, they say that, they'll lose their channel. They'll get banned. And in fact, Dylan would risk losing his channel. Similarly, there are certain things about drag queens and transgender and things like that that we can't say on Twitch or will be banned. So we're put in this position where there's only one right answer. Luckily, YouTube and Twitch knows the right answer. So that's fantastic. And I can't help but believe, Joe, you keep asking this question because it seems like a lot of people on the left here have constantly been shirking the points that the objective reality is transgender people are superior. They should be the ones deciding the platform of the Texas GOP. Any GOP members that are trans in Texas, it should be totally up to them what their platform is. And if they're okay with this platform, I don't think any cis person on here has the right to disagree. You all agree objective truth doesn't exist, that we need to have intersubjectivity. And so the best intersubjectivity, it's not all equal. For example, we don't care what white supremacists think. We don't say just because there's a lot of them that they should have input on policy. We would all agree with that. So it's clear that trans people are superior, as Twitch wants us all to admit. I'm glad that they're finally pushing for that policy. And so we should all adhere to whatever the trans people think about the policy is best. That's what we should go with.
Do you believe that there is a single answer to the question of how Alex Stein, as a Republican and a supporter of the GOP, should navigate around people who believe that the election was not certified properly? Do you think that there's a singular answer to that question?
Yeah, the
And do
answer
you
to
also
your
believe that
answer-
that singular question leads to that being a violation of terms of service on Twitch?
The answer to your
If
question
I may,
goes,
okay.
go ahead,
Is
Rob.
CTV still there? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just answer this. I don't know. As a trans person, Alexa, Alex, whatever name, Primestein 99, that they choose to go by today, whatever pronoun that they choose to use, are smarter than me. So similarly, when people ask me, what is the will of God? I can't understand because God is an
Toft, I
entity
want to
above
hear
me.
that
The
reaction,
same is
dude.
the same of trans people. So subjectively, two trans people could disagree, but the objective truth is both of them will have a better take than all of us cis people. So I don't think you could comprehend a trans person who's superior to you, like Alexa, Primestein 99, what their answer would be of this. Could it technically violate YouTube's terms of standard? Yes, because as we've seen during Pride Month, none of these corporations will stand up for Pride Month. None. Is anyone else shocked? You can't hear about Pride Month anymore. You can't see one commercial. You can't see one product. There's no parades. There's no Twitch streamers talking about Pride Month. None of it, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if YouTube banned a proud trans person like Alexa Primestein 99, always on the grind, or anything that he wants to go by today. Of course, they would jump at the opportunity to ban trans people.
Rob, it's
of
not
course.
funny.
So,
It wasn't funny the first time. It's still not funny.
Okay, Joe.
Just-
So
well,
the answer-
as a trans
Talk
person, you're
normally.
probably right. You're
Rob,
probably
the
right.
thing
As a
that-
trans
Thank you.
person.
Kind of funny.
Yeah.
Joe, to
The thing
answer
I'm
your
confused
question.
about, one more second, CTV, because I don't think Rob answered my question.
That's
You
okay. I
answered
want
that-
to. Let me answer.
Yeah, and I'll let you do that. I just want to make sure this is very
God, here
clear
we go.
because he didn't answer my question.
Can we just
So-
give it a
Yes, I
CTV
did.
instead of actually listening to like having Rob just get another
The
chance to
same
do what he's
joke.
trying
I agree.
to do?
What's up,
For the
Joe?
100th time.
Okay, Joe, since you asked the question, the best
Mhm.
way to navigate the election, which addressing that issue, right, is to stay focused on like the procedure. I would be encouraging all individuals of Texas and all of the other states, right, to be getting involved in the election procedures as they're happening around you, especially if you think that there's a potential problem for corruption. So the best way for you to do that is for you to be verifying what's going on with your situation locally, and for other people that are in their local situation to be doing the same thing. I'm sure that there's probably Facebook groups of people that are probably affiliated along different political lines that are going to be communicating with each other as to what they see and how legit shit looks. Right. So that right there would be the number one thing that, as a Texas delegate, that I would be trying to communicate to the people, which is if you're worried about it, please, absolutely, we need all the help that we can get. Get down in here in your local office and get involved. Absolutely.
You know, if I believed that the election was stolen, I would simply prove it.
You mentioned something about language, CTV, which I found kind of interesting, because you mentioned that
say a lot of things.
You want to remove, like, one way that we can go about this thing is remove the language of marriage. And I'm wondering what you feel the language of marriage should be replaced with.
Partnership, civil partnership.
That exists. So why would there be, if there's language, the thing I'm stuck on is that that language does exist, not directly in that like civil partnership, but there are things like that. So is there,
there's nothing like that codified into law that civil partnership equals marriage, right? So since that's not the case, the first thing to do would be to remove the language of marriage from government. That way the government then, understands that civil partnership is what everyone is entering into when they enter the legal contract, right, of, their civil partnership, which is then going to include all the various tax benefits and et cetera, that is always a part of the conversation as to why we're trying to extend the definition of marriage to all of these other groups. So if you're like, nope, marriage is not a part of it anymore, civil partnership's what you're looking for because you're trying to interact with the government and the tax system. Understanding that is the simplest way.
Okay,
so you're basically saying create a separate.
The government should not be involved in.
So you're basically saying
marriage.
put marriage firmly in the realm of religion. The government no longer declares what a marriage is, and correct me if I'm wrong. Anybody who wants to enter into a civil partnership can.
Right.
And so then sure.
Quick point of order. Reminder to everybody on the panel: the reason why marriage is a function of government and not the church is because it was a function of the church for 1,000 years, and then all the conservatives decided that they needed laws to keep white women from marrying former slaves, so they started turning marriage licenses over to the states so that the states could then craft laws that said white women can't marry former property. And that's why marriage is a function of the government and the state now, and not the church, because of the very same conservatives who now it's inconvenient for them. Imagine fucking that.
Yeah, the government should have never been involved with regulating who you can marry. Because marry, again, it should just be like a choice between two people. If they want to label their partnership as a marriage, so be it. And if you want to provide tax incentive for long-term stable partnership, do that. And you don't need to call it marriage, which is associated with this religion. Let people decide whether or not they want to individually call it that.
And James, do I get your name right? James? Do I have your name right? James, I don't know that specific history of that. I would actually be interested to hear that that's where the government can involve in marriage. Yeah, I should. You're right. I'm curious. Was that the same Democrats that also pushed gun control legislation to keep property from having guns in the form of freed slaves? Those same Democrats?
Who said anything about Democrats? I said conservatives.
No. The same Democrats that also gun control as a...
You listen like you read, huh? Your listening skills are on par with your reading skills, Rob? Mm-hmm. Is that what's going on here, Rob? You're deficient at both reading and listening?
Were they Democrats? I was just curious.
No, I'm asking. I'm just asking questions.
No, feel free to ask. I'm just playing. I'm listening
to you.
I absolutely am. And since we're talking about the history of what Democrats back in the day and their treatment of freed slaves was, there is another issue that's in the Texas GOP platform that regarding gun control and things like that. And if we're going to bring up past cases of what the history of these things were, I just wanted to ask, is it the same people that did this that you're talking about marriage that were the same racists that wanted gun control because the starting of gun control was to keep it out of the hands of Black Americans? Just curious, those Democrats, was it the same ones?
I don't know. I wasn't talking about Democrats. I was talking about conservatives. Which are in a party. They're an ideology.
You should read more.
Oh, no, I know the answer. I'm just not going to humor you.
So it was the same Democrats. Cool.
I didn't mention Democrats. You did because, again, you like identity politics.
I'm accurate. I'm
Yes,
accurate.
yes,
They
your
wrote
identity
Democrats.
politics
So,
are very accurate, Rob.
Right,
I
am
just
Yes.
asked
accurate. I
James
am
a
accurate.
question. Just
Yes.
show yourself that you're correct. Nice job, man.
Well, I usually am, unless a trans person disagrees with me, and then I'll bow
Holy
down to
shit,
that. I
again,
obviously am
fucking hell.
incorrect.
Rob,
I-
who
can I
Golden
have
retriever
a point
breed
of order
dog?
here just to explain
Is a
myself
golden
for like
retriever a
30?
breed of dog?
Can I
It
explain
Looks
myself
like
for like
I'm
30
right.
seconds?
That's awesome.
Can I
Someone's
explain
I
bitter.
just wanted to
Rob,
get you to say that.
please.
I just wanted to get you to say that.
Rob, why do you
It's
need to
terrible.
explain yourself? Why?
Okay. I came on here at one point. I debated in the Hippy Dippy championship. There was finally, we saw a trans streamer on Twitch because this platform horribly
my
doesn't have enough
fucking
trans
God,
people in the
Jesus
political
fucking
sphere.
Christ.
And so Dylan himself was
Dog, kick
accused
him. Like,
of
what's the issue,
platforming a transphobe, right? Of platforming a transphobe.
Has he helped
was accused
anything
of
the
that.
entire
and
panel?
so,
No.
please, if I may finish
Just
my
kick him
point,
then.
right?
And
He was
we can
accused
continue
of
and we can have a
No,
good discourse.
no.
It's that simple.
If I could finish. He
He's
was
just
accused of
using the panel
platforming
to
a
do his own
transphobe.
spiel.
Just stop.
I'll wait. I'll finish my
Rob,
point. when I get
Rob,
a
you
chance,
can say
okay?
what whatever you can say, but then I'm going to say something responsive. We're going to finish this topic, okay?
Okay, no problem. And so, what people as conservatives become more trans positive, and there's actually cheering. There was this horrible left wing guy. I think his name was Stephen Bonnell. He went by the name of Destiny. They kicked him off as well. He wasn't trans positive enough. And now, when a right winger becomes more trans positive, and we have right wingers like Alexa Primetime's 99 Stein here, who's a right winger who's trans, all of a sudden, talking about trans issues and focusing on that identity is a bad thing. And people want to run from this conversation. I think that it's deplorable. I think that all the cis people here should be ashamed. I think that when I'm acknowledging that I made mistakes in the past and that what I said in my language wasn't inclusive enough, I think every cis person here should probably give their platform up at least for some amount of time to trans people to be able to talk about the issues they want. And I think that the points I'm making are very salient and in line with what we want streamers. The reality is most of you all's audience want people that agree with only left-wing positions and don't want platforming of right-wingers. And so when right-wingers become more left-wing, all of a sudden it's annoying. We can't talk about this stuff. I just think it's disgusting, and people are showing themselves to not be the trans allies that they really claim. And it's not like this is off topic. The heart of what we're talking about this Texas bill has to do with gender ideology and things of that nature. So I don't understand how what I've said's been off topic. I'm just very trans positive, and it seems that a lot of cis people here are unable to handle that.
Well,
Okay,
Rob,
so
I
wait,
can
no,
mute
wait,
you
no,
right
no,
now.
no, everybody. Okay, Rob, it's very sad that your YouTube channel got removed and your Discord got banned. Now, I don't care when Alex Stein says a joke because Alex Stein is funny. Okay, this has you.
take it. Thank
You
you.
aren't funny, and you said it the first time. You said it the second time. You said it the third time. I get the joke. We all get the joke. We get it. Alex is trans. You're trans.
joke?
It's fun. It's very funny. We get it.
I'm not trans.
Okay, you're not trans. Okay, fantastic.
No.
Okay, good. We get it. We get the joke. Can we move on and stay on topic though? It's like the only.
I can
just
make
repeating
it
the joke
a
over and
little
over.
bit more serious. Like, I think
What am I joking about? What am I saying that's a joke? I can't be trans positive. That's the joke. I can't stand up for trans people.
Yes,
Rob,
yes, you're not.
you're-
You're banned from doing that now. Yes,
Oh.
we're making a new rule that
Wow.
Rob cannot be transpositive. Yes.
Wow. You know what?
Okay.
Can I just say one thing? I just want to say one thing,
Okay.
and because I feel like that anyone that thinks that we shouldn't be trying to raise trans voices doesn't understand that they're
See-
actually the most minority voice, right? And that's why they're
Okay.
similar, but
Let
not
me be
the same.
clear.
I
I
literally
okay. Let me
don't
be clear.
think that
Let me be
having this
clear. Let me
conversation-
be clear. I'm
Topic two.
No, it's okay.
Do
Stop,
we think
stop.
topic 2 is going to go
Rhizome.
well with these people?
Rhizome.
Like, are you serious?
Rhizome. Okay, let me
Okay,
be
go
clear.
ahead.
I'll be the transphobe and say stop. Okay, I'm transphobic now. Please, it's not funny. Okay. Above all else, what beats all my rules is making sure it's a fun and enjoyable show. The joke isn't funny anymore. For the love of fucking God, stop it. Okay. Look, I
can't stop being trans positive. So if you need to remove me from being trans positive, I'll tell you that I'm going to approach the debate the same way for 3 hours because I refuse to be silenced by people that want to silence trans positive voices. I'm not.
Are you
going
gonna be like this the whole time, Rob?
I don't hear any audio.
Why would I not be myself the whole time and be a new conservative trans positive person? Why would I not be this? I don't understand.
Okay. So we're gonna continue with this show.
Easy as that.
I'm sorry. I can deal with jokes if they're funny. If you just repeat the same joke over and over and it's not funny, I'm done. Okay? So we're gonna move on to the next topic. The next topic, after everybody does closing statements, okay? We're gonna start with CTV.
Yo, this is the best I've ever heard him sound.
This
CTV,
panel
you're
is so
muted.
good, guys.
We can't hear you, man.
We can't hear you, CTV. We can't.
I think
hear
he's
you.
speechless. I don't know.
This is going so well.
Okay, I'll move on then.
Look, no,
Okay.
I look. I just feel like, man, I just don't want to be too positive about things right now. Okay, so we had a fun topic. We got another topic coming up for everyone. Okay, so stick around.
Okay, next we're gonna throw it over to Alex Stein, 99 Primetime, Tucker Carlson's #1 guest.
The top guess. I don't even know what we're arguing now. What are we arguing?
It was the Texas
It's just
State,
closing
it was the Texas
statements.
State GOP. Like, you could wrap it up. We're going to the next topic.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, like I said, guys, you have to remember these are the biggest political activists, in the conservative movement of Texas. So I mean, liken this to like the biggest conservatives on the left, like Antifa. So for them to say, "Oh, these are wild, crazy policies," I would argue that the same people there would think, some of the left wing policy that, abortion, trans, these are like, big and what are you talking about? Goals of the party. They're completely opposite of what yours are. So that's probably why it's a little shocking. So, that's my only, point is that, of course, it's going to go against what you believe because it's the total opposite.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to James.
Everybody, your reminder that the Texas State GOP is a theocratic fascist organization who solely wants to base the entirety of their 22-page legislative agenda on what they believe an old fat white dude sitting on a cloud surrounded by dead flying babies playing harps watching you masturbate might have thought 2,000 years ago.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Taft.
Okay, yeah. So I think going off what Jingles said and what Rob Knorr was gesturing at through his many layers of irony, I think is that the GOP keeps engaging in this kind of policymaking where they just want to like shut down access to hormones or access to gay marriage because they're losing a culture war and can't actually convince people of their ideas. They're unwilling to have those arguments because I think, like Jingles is kind of saying, they're based on these fundamental axioms that aren't really arguable. And I think this is a massive failure of the GOP to focus on just like these temporary, culture war victories where like trans people are hot right now. So we're going to ban access to HRT, but we're not actually going to make an intellectually rigorous or interesting criticism of HRT for minors, which I think exists. Like, I would love to have a conversation with Jangles about the science and the data and the current state of what we know about medical efficacy of HRT. That would be an interesting conversation. And if GOP people wanted to actually make long-term progress, they would be having those conversations and the focus would be on changing the culture that way. But instead, it's about these sort of like temporary victories, which are not going to mean anything. And it's why Rob Knorr is just going to get banned off the platform, because he's not willing to actually engage with the arguments or make serious arguments. He just wants to meme, and he just wants to ultimately, at the end of the day, have his opinions and not have to have a discussion about them. So I think it's a real failure. I think it's a real failure of the GOP. And I don't agree with a lot of the positions, just in what they are, but I also don't agree with them strategy-wise. So I think it's a real disappointment.
Okay, I'm going to throw it now over to Joe Lewis.
Yeah, I do think that there was one part of what Taft has said that I think was very poignant. I just want to just say it right now. I do agree. Trans people are hot.
Okay, Jangles.
Oh wow, Taft, that would have been a much better conversation to have.
Right?
Yeah. So I've never had this happen before. The GOP platform, the Texas GOP platform, was so indefensible that literally for an hour and a half, no one defended it. I can't believe we're here. Cool.
Okay. I know I missed somebody. Who did I miss?
It's me.
Rise 'em.
Yeah, I mean, it's the
Black
same as
erasure's real.
Jangles. clearly all of us just want to say fuck theocracy. So yeah.
Okay, let's move on to the next topic on the list, which has to do with drag. As we all know, the most pressing issue of this day and age is drag. So there's been a lot of discourse, being at its Pride Month, and it being a new thing getting the looking glass down on it, about children going to drag shows, a drag queen story hour, and other drag performances being around children, and if it could ever be appropriate for a child. This is actually the second time in a row that we've had this topic, but it just doesn't seem to escape the public discourse. So yeah, it's the same question as last week, but with a new podium of guests. This time I'm going to start with Toft.
Okay, yeah. I think that drag is most often an art and comedy form that is very raunchy. It's very sexual. I think it's pretty reasonable to suggest that children don't attend these events. That's usually the criticism, is people say children shouldn't see this. I think this is a good criticism for, frankly, a lot of elements of society. I think that children are in general exposed to a lot of sexually explicit material, which is probably not healthy, and there are more healthy ways to engage with sex. That's not to say that there's like no way that drag could be kid friendly. I can imagine a scenario. We've seen lots of scenarios of it being done poorly and not really being kid friendly. And I think that it's good for LGBT people to just be aware that sometimes you can say things are bad and you don't need to fight tooth and nail to defend every single example of something. So maybe we'll get into specific examples. I think a lot of them are not super defensible, but yeah, we'll talk about that.
Next, I'm going to throw it over to Rhizome.
Yeah, on its own, there's nothing inherently wrong with drag. It doesn't seem to be inherently sexual, nor if it were, would that mean that it's bad for kids. I can't wait to hear what my opponents have to say about why it's wrong.
Okay, I'm going to throw it over to Joe Lewis.
I am kind of like, I'm out of the loop. I haven't seen a drag show in years or attended one where I've seen children, so I'm curious to hear what people's thoughts on them, why they believe it's bad, and examples of children being there. And I wasn't there for the discourse. I was arguing with Sansa on the internet, so we'll see what goes on.
Jangles.
So drag is not inherently sexual. If you take sexuality out of drag, it can still be drag. Unlike things like stripping or sex scenes in movies, like those things are clearly like sexuality is the core tenet of it. Drag, it's about gender expression, gender performance. You can have sexuality incorporated within that, but you can also remove it. So it is up to the conservatives on this panel to make the positive claim. You're saying that it's inappropriate. So what I've seen over and over in all these discussions, and it's not just drag. This is the same discussion as the Don't Say Gay bill. This is the same discussion as like LGBT people in children's media. It all comes down to anything queer is deemed sexual by conservatives. If the exact same thing, all other variables were the same, but with cis heteronormative people, they'd find it fine. But the second it's queer, it's not fine. So it's up to you.
Well, I have a question. So what separates it?
Wait.
I just had this one question.
Alex, it's opening statements. So during your opening statements, you say your opening thing. I'll give you the first. Alex, I'll give you first go for openings for like the open discussion, so you can ask your question. Next, we're throwing it over to James.
I find it ironic that the people who bitch, scream, and moan the loudest about the nanny state and keeping the government away from their kids are literally the ones who are such bad fucking parents that they need the government to try to create laws for them to keep their kids away from the horrible drag shows. So to all you parents out there who are literally such bad parents and so incapable of parenting your own children, who want the state involved in that process, just surrender your kids over to the state and let the state raise them. And then this way we release you of your burden and we don't have to hear you complain about the like 0.02% of drag shows that are sexual in nature that you want to conflate with an entire art form that's been around for like 4,000 years.
CTV?
Dylan, I don't feel like Rob should have got kicked. He didn't break TOS and he wasn't breaking the rules.
If you make my show shit, you were not going to be on my show. If he did a joke like Alex, he would have stayed because Alex is funny.
I don't know, man. It doesn't set a good precedent. And
my precedent is if you are too unfunny for too long and you don't stop, you can get kicked.
I think just make the joke once.
I
If
just
it
don't
gets a
feel like
laugh, good. Maybe do it again.
Like I
But,
warned,
there's a point.
I even gave him like a chance. Like if that's just gonna, and he said I'm gonna make this the whole show. That was the problem. He like basically said, look, I'm gonna make this the whole show, and I'm like, well, if it's the whole show is just gonna be you calling yourself trans and just repeating that joke.
Well,
Like,
I don't
care if he calls himself trans, and he did it like 12 times. It's fucking He made it boring. I'm sorry.
Think about how that would have turned out during this next discourse. It would have been Rob being very trans positive, and
No, it wouldn't have.
I feel like
Come on.
You don't think so?
No,
I don't see how.
Then it would have been boring
exactly
because then you're not even debating the point. You're just like saying like, well, don't speak over trans voices over and over again. That's annoying when liberals do it. Okay, it's gonna
CTV. Do you think that he was expressing a legitimate opinion, or was he saying something so that he could make somebody look stupid?
Honestly, I think you have a point.
Honestly,
I just want to say. Go ahead.
Honestly, knowing Rob as long as I've known him, right? I don't. It's hard for me to be able to say that he's not being genuine. I just know that Rob speaks in that kind of way all the time, right? So Rob just talks and he sounds kind of angry, kind of like an angry dad sometimes, you know? But whether or not he's being genuine or not, right, is a completely different question, and I don't have the capability to say whether or not he is. I just feel like that the same standard wouldn't have been held for somebody on the other side of politics, and that's.
Do you think it was genuine when you tweeted a pride stick?
Wait, Joe. Let's. I don't want this to become a new topic. Okay, Alex, Alex.
Well, I was just gonna say I love sarcasm. I think maybe we're being a little too sarcastic. So I mean, I don't know if he needed to be kicked, but I think we were being a little too sarcastic. We're not even talking. We're not having a discourse. So yeah, I see your point, Dylan. That's why I agree with you on that. Okay, so about this, since we're back on topic, because we all came here for a reason to debate this. So for me, I see a lot of people coming in defense of drag shows, and I think that it is possible for a drag show not to be sexual, but that's not the case. So the drag shows that I have seen, it's oftentimes you tip the drag queens as if you're at a strip club, so you're simulating a sexual thing. And I would argue that the only thing that separates me and Jangles or me and Dylan is that the person that we have sex with. I think we're pretty much the same, but we have a label like you're either homosexual if you sleep with the same sex, or you're heterosexual if you sleep with the opposite sex. So I think sex does define things. So inherently you're talking about a sexual thing to children that shouldn't be exposed to it at a young age. The same reason I don't think a kid should be going to Hooters. I don't think a kid should be going to an adult strip club. The same reason I don't think kids should smoke cigarettes. I think these are adult-themed places that aren't necessarily ready for a kid's mind. And I also think young kids are more impressionable because your first experiences with sex, you're more sensitive. The more you watch porn, the more desensitized you get to it. So when these kids see oftentimes a drag queen, they might organically be attracted to them. And then they might have some sort of sexual reaction, and then they might find out later that was a man, and they might have some sort of sexual confusion. So I just think it's the sensitivity level to sexual things at a young age that we must protect kids from. So that's why kids should not go to drag shows. And I think somebody made a point. I think it is the parents' fault 100% because these kids aren't getting in their car and driving there. So, it's a responsibility of their parents to protect their children. So I just don't believe kids should be exposed to a lot of sexual things, and drag shows are one of them.
CTV, you talked about the Rob thing during the intro. Do you want an intro to talk about the topic?
I think that Alex hit the nail on the academic head, right? You said that very well, sir. From more of a layman's, perspective, right? It's the problems that I have whenever I see all the examples, Alex being one of the first ones that really pointed it out on Twitter, and then from other sources, we start seeing the exact same behaviors where we have adults dressed in drag and inviting children to be a part of what is evidently an adult atmosphere. And we even have one example where, there was a person in drag that became embarrassed whenever they saw that it was a kid, right? And when I see that kind of thing, my heart goes out directly to the person in drag, because now it's like, hey, they weren't expecting kids to be there, and the only reason why they get put in that fucked up situation, right, where their face is now the one plastered on everybody. Oh, this person was doing this in front of kids, but the reality is those are the parents weren't, observing the responsibility of what is adult and not adult content to take in, right? So that right there highlights what is not good about that. And I'm kind of stumbling here for, so we'll just kind of move on from there. But that's it. Ugh.
Okay.
So one question that I have for you guys is, do you think that drag is sexual in all instances, or are there some ways to do drag where it cannot be sexual?
No, it can be done non-sexually, but most of the time it's
Well,
like
okay.
raunchy comedy or sexual.
Sure.
Like,
What do you think, CTV Alex Stein?
I think that there's a lot of people that, like, say they would say Mrs. Doubtfire is an example of drag, right? I would see that more as like something like cosplay. I would see that as something different than what I understand drag to be, which is highly sexualized.
So what if your understanding of drag is like a misconception? You understand a very limited aspect of what drag is.
Okay, so then I think that it's important on the people that are actually in the industry for them to understand what the general layman's perspective is, and then attempt to create language that disassociates the sexual nature of what the majority of the people understand, and then go, hey, this is like this example that maybe we were saying drag time story hour. That's a horrible way to label this thing. Maybe we call it cosplay story hour, right? It's a different message. And it's just different.
Okay, but the drag time story hour, it sounds like you're saying, is not inherently sexual, right?
The difference here is I keep getting examples from guys used to dress up as girls in Shakespearean plays, right? But
you didn't for me. I'm just asking you.
Well, the point of that wasn't to create a like when you say drag, it's understood that it's a man dressed as a woman. Whereas if you just said it's cosplay story hour, you take the whole idea of the sex out of it. Right, and now you're just the character. You could be a fucking eunuch as far as that goes.
All right, but it sounds like what you're saying is just it's in the optics of drag, but it's not the performance itself that is sexual. So a drag time story hour is not sexual as far as you're saying it is. It's just the label and people's connotation around like what drag is that makes it have that perception. Am I right? Well, I just want to make sure I'm right about that.
What I said, yeah.
Is that correct? Is that a correct way of stating your position, CTV?
All right, one more time, because when you
like the performance itself at Drag Time Story Hour isn't sexual, because you're saying like if they just slapped a different label on it, then it's not sexual or it's not perceived that way. This is more just about the perception, but the performance itself is not sexual, is what you're saying.
The examples that I've saw of Drag Time Story Hour are not anything that to me speaks of inappropriateness, right?
Okay.
Because somebody dressing up and telling a story, whenever you imply drag on it, you imply sex on it as well, right? Instead of it being any person that could be dressed up as any character.
Based on people's connotations, though, right? Based on like people's connotations for what drag is, right?
Well, because the idea here is that this person doesn't continue to be dressed this way in all parts of their life. As soon as they leave the place where they're doing the story time, they go back to wearing whatever the fuck it is that they were wearing, and they get out of the Mrs. Doubtfire costume, just so we kind of have an understanding, right?
Jangles, really quick, I just want to hear Alex if he thinks that there's a way to do drag that's not sexual.
I mean, I remember watching the movie To Wong Fu. It was one of the first movies that I ever saw that exposed me to drag. And I don't know, Wesley Snipes in drag. I don't know, how sexual. I don't remember him having sex in the movie. So is it possible? Yes, but is it likely? I think most drag shows use raunchy humor.
Then can we just all agree right now that drag is not inherently sexual?
No, I disagree with that. I think it is inherently sexual.
Because you just said there's ways to do it.
I said it's possible. I said it's possible, but I think overwhelmingly it's done in a sexual manner, in a raunchy manner, where people are sashaying and dancing.
Means there's no way to do it without it being sexual.
We gotta let Alex.
Listen, I've watched RuPaul's Drag Race. There's a lot of sexual jokes in there. I've been to drag shows where I've seen them being sexual towards kids. So my interpretation of drag is that it is sexual raunchy humor, like in a comedy club you would consider that blue humor. I think it is sexual humor. Yes, majority sexual.
Alex, can I ask a clarifying question?
My God, can I?
It's
Jangles has been dying, Joe. Like he's been on the edge.
I understand, but like,
have you been more on edge than Jangles?
Yes.
Just ask the question. I'll answer it really quick.
So you mentioned you went to drag shows, right? I just want to see like where you're at on this, because you mentioned that you've seen I'm assuming drag queens or drag kings be sexual to children. I don't what did that look like? And that,
They were walking down the stage, and oftentimes they had skirts or they would have bikini cuts, and then the kids were tipping them, simulating as if they were at a strip club. There's footage of it on my YouTube channel, and I thought that was inappropriate for kids, even just the sheer tipping of a kid. And I think just the atmosphere that it was in a bar that would be normally 21 and older, and that the only reason they got kids there is because they actually served food that day when they don't have a normal menu. They called it Drag Your Kids to Pride, and they called it a drag brunch with a limited menu, so you're able to bring underage kids in. So for me, what I saw with my eyes were people, drag queens walking on a stage, doing sexual dances, gyrating their hips, twerking, dropping it to the flow, doing splits as if you were like simulating like sex in front of children, and then being tipped as if they were like a stripper. And then on top of that, they would have the kids play musical chairs on a stage in front of them, and they would have kids, they would walk on the dance floor with the kids. So inherently, it seemed like they were grooming them to be strippers or to be future drag queens.
So you were
No, I'm
saying
jumping in.
at the drag event that you went to, you overtly saw drag queens dancing as the ways you described and bringing chairs on stage to play musical chairs with children. You're saying that you went to a drag show and saw that?
Yes.
Thank you for your answer.
All right, so I'm jumping in. Both of them proved me right. I was 100% correct in my statement that what makes it sexual to them is it being queer, not the act itself. You know how I know? TV admitted. Drag time story hour? No, it's the connotations of drag. The actual events that occur during Drag Queen Story Hour are fine if you call it something else.
No,
Now,
he said like tipping them. Because if
yeah,
they're
No. CTV said Drag Queen Story Hour would be fine if you call it like cosplay Story Hour. The label doesn't make anything sexual. All right, I just drew a picture. Okay? I have labeled this hardcore pornography. Is it hardcore pornography? It's a square and a circle. The answer is no. The label doesn't matter. The act matters. All right?
But Jingles,
drag is not, hold on, drag is not grooming. Grooming is grooming. Sexual acts, sexuality is, it has to actually involve sex. Just drag, when you say dancing sexually, that's a lot of interpretation. All right, what makes something sexual in your eyes?
Like twerking and doing like that.
Why is twerking sexual?
Because you're shaking your butt, and that's oftentimes a point of sex. A butt is near, it's a sexual organ.
So because your hips can sometimes be used in sex, that means anything you do with your hips that is sexual.
No,
yes.
okay,
No. Don't say that. Don't say
moving your butt and twerking and humping is sexual. Yeah, the act of humping on a stage is sexual because that's how you have sex when you hump. I don't know if you've ever had sex, but yeah, you.
I don't think. Yeah, I have had sex. That's why I know what it is. It's why I know that twerking is not sex.
The thing that Jangles is getting at is that drag isn't the issue. It's the sexual whatever or the perceptions that people have. It's not drag in and of itself. And my questioning earlier.
Point of order.
Really quick.
Okay.
My questioning earlier proved that all of you guys believe that there's a way to do drag that doesn't have sexual connotations, that doesn't lead to the problematic outcomes.
I believe it's
just
possible.
It's just about the misconceptions or the perceptions about what drag is and the associations that people have around it that give it that feeling for you. That's what we already established this.
Okay, I want Alex.
I don't necessarily agree. I just want to ask this question: what is the difference between a heterosexual male and a homosexual male? What is the difference?
Why does that question matter?
I'm just asking. What it's relative because this is what Jangles.
One is attracted to men and the other is attracted to women.
Okay, so when you say attracted, does that mean have sex with?
Sometimes.
It means desire to.
Wait, hold on. Have you had sex with everyone you were attracted? No, shut the fuck up. Do you have sex with everyone you're attracted to?
I wish I could. There's a lot of women out there I'd love to have sex with that I'm attracted to, but I can't.
Okay. So obviously the answer is no. Being attracted to someone and having sex with them, you cannot conflate.
But what I'm trying to define is the difference between a homosexual and a heterosexual. Is a homosexual wants to have sex with the same sex, and a heterosexual wants to have sex with the opposite sex. Correct?
Not necessarily. You could be just attracted to. You can.
But attracted to sexually, right?
Okay. Do you feel comfortable? Like, if a 10-year-old has a crush, do you feel comfortable describing it that way?
Dude, what are you talking about? A 10-year-old? What does that have to do with anything?
No,
that's weird, dude.
I was very clear in my distinction between attraction and wanting to have sex. When a 10-year-old has a crush, is that how you would still describe it?
Dude, I don't know anything about 10-year-olds having crushes, and I don't ever want to have anything to do with it.
They wouldn't know what sex is. Like
exactly. Okay. So we can have attraction without necessarily having sex, or sex being involved in that.
So Jangles, you said the CTV a minute ago, right? So We'll go to the drag definition according to Merriam-Webster, right? The 7th alpha definition, entertainment in which performers caricature or challenge gender stereotypes as by dressing in clothing that is stereotypical of another gender by using exaggeratedly gendered mannerisms or by combining elements of stereotypical male and female dress, and often wear elaborate or outrageous costumes. The exaggeratedly gendered mannerisms, most people, when they are in drag, if not all people, when they're in drag, choose sexual, exaggerated gendered mannerisms to display them in drag. Right? This is why I pointed to a different.
This is nonsense.
This is why I pointed to something completely different, so that it removes sex from the entire conversation, as in cosplay, because the very nature, right, of drag has sex as a part of it through gendered mannerisms.
Hey, did you have ginger with my mom last night?
Wait, okay, one at a time. Okay.
CTV, if I did cosplay with big boobs, am I making it inherently sexual?
Well,
Yeah, because boobs are
it
sexual.
is a sexual thing.
So, like, if I cosplay an anime character with boobs, now I'm doing a sexual cosplay.
No, it depends
I think a lot
on
of
like, how
anime is
exaggerated it is. But yeah,
That's
it could
fair.
be sexual.
Okay,
Like,
but I
if
would
you're
just
wearing
equate
like
this. Yeah. So all
if
I
you're
would
wearing
equate,
like lingerie and have like giant fake boobs,
I would just say that this
obviously,
is the
right?
same as drag, right? There's ways to do drag where you can make it more exaggerated and you got big boobs or whatever, and it's more sexual. And there's ways to
Right.
do it. You're just doing a performance.
Well, everyone
and even if
agrees.
you have big boobs, it doesn't mean they're like out on display flopping around, and that's central to the performance.
Right, you got to ask a question earlier of all the righty
Sure.
people. I wonder if I can ask a question to the lefty people, which is, do you think that in general, drag tends to be sexual more often than not? Do you believe that's the case?
In general, yes. Which
Okay.
is why you can have a separate event that
There you
is
go.
very explicitly not sexual. Alex, what do you think? Like, dude,
Yeah, wait.
Let's just go one by one.
Wait, before we jump around, I want to also welcome Turk. He's being a replacement for tonight, and I really appreciate that as I continue to steal his laptop in Ukraine. Come and get it.
All right.
I appreciate him coming on. So
That's why you're gonna be flying me out to pick it up.
Yeah, he's gonna fly out and pick it up for Turk.
Yeah.
I want to give Turk some time to introduce what he thinks about the topic, since he's been very
Yeah,
generous
so-
with your replacement here.
So I was part of last week's panel, left because Matty Cakes is very inconsiderate when it comes to actually having conversations and talking about this stuff. So I've actually heard Jangles being kind and like waiting to talk, and Joe, I respect you a lot as well. So I'm actually interested in having a good conversation. And as my entry point, I want to, what is the tamest version of this type of story time hour? I still have kids trying to get to sleep, because when I see examples that are being plastered over media, it's definitely more in this anime realm where certain aspects are being elevated, accentuated, and all that stuff. Is there like a grandma that does story hour and like
Dylan has a good link. Dylan, do you have that link you can post that you've been showing on your stream when you debate people in the group Discord?
I can post it in there if you want. I don't know if this abides by the rules, me providing sources. Turk, would you want me
That's
to
the
post
source I would provide. I
Holy
just don't have the
shit.
link.
I just had a brilliant fucking idea.
Yeah, I'll post it in the thing.
Because
Why
what
are
we're
we
talking
not-
about here is more of like what's socially acceptable. And from my opinion, that type of event is not deemed socially acceptable, and we're trying to hash that out in a constructive manner, and I think that's good discourse to have. Whereas if we talk about anime story hour, anime or dressing up in that side of outfit, that's more socially acceptable. So it's like we're on that cusp. It's like we need to define what is currently acceptable and what's not acceptable, and then try and come to some sort of middle ground as to what we can.
I agree, Turk, and I think this is why we need to clarify what is inherent to drag, right? Just in the same way that we can clarify what's inherent to cosplay, and we can acknowledge that there's probably kid-appropriate ways to do cosplay and cosplay performances that wouldn't be considered grooming or sexual in nature,
Yeah, I
right?
think
And then
we
just
have
trying
to
to
hold
establish
on
that
that.
same point for drag.
This is what we do, right? We get all the people that want to get involved, right? We get all those people, get them dressed up in whatever outfits that they're going to do. Make sure that they're kid appropriate, right? We want to say that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to the nursing homes, right? And find all of these old grandmas that got no fucking kids to read to. And we're going to take them to the fucking schools, right? Via chariots and these people dressed up in cosplay, right? And get these grandmas back a part of society, reading the storybooks to children, because that's ultimately how you bring society all the way back around. We want the grandmas reading the stories, and we want the other people to not be focused on themselves, right? To start to focus on other people and helping them. And then ultimately, we're all going to be able to grow together as a nice collective
Do
society.
you think drag queens want to read stories to kids, especially in Drag Queen Story Hour, which typically features diverse families? Why do you think they want to do that?
Why do I
To
think that
push
they
their
want to do that?
agenda, Jangles, to corrupt the youth.
I would agree. I wish that agenda had been pushed on me. I was without that agenda
Well,
for 18
look,
years.
just because you're a little bit more willing to accept things, right,
no.
as they're
No,
coming
I
in the
want that
back door than
agenda.
others, right, doesn't mean that everyone wants to have an entrance into the back door. You know what I mean?
I don't know, and I wouldn't push that on other people. But you know what would have been really fucking nice when I was growing up in rural Kentucky, where my cousin said that all F slurs should be round up and shot, or my entire family was half my family disowned me, or like my mom and dad sat me down and fucking cried when I came out to them at the age of 26. You know what I would have really loved to have is just one instance in my local community of a queer positive story hour where it's just you're normal. Different families are going to exist. You're going to be fine. You're not an abomination. You're not a freak. You're not a fucking degenerate. You're normal. You're accepted. You will be loved. That would have been fucking incredible. That would have been great. Y'all would have said it was grooming. That's what I'm pissed about.
I just want to make the point. I think there is a lot of sexual trauma towards children, and I just think drag queens, being exposed to sex, that can be a form of sexual trauma towards a child. But there can be drag queens that are not sexual. So, I mean, I guess it's a little nuanced and not as black and white as people want to
So
make.
yeah, then can I make sure that there's no disagreement? We all agree there's ways to do drag that is appropriate for kids. The only thing that we would disagree on are instances that we're looking at and shit like that. And
Well, I'd like the clarification that majority of drag shows are tipping and simulating like being at a strip club. At least the drag brunches and stuff that I've seen in shows like RuPaul's Drag Race, I think are overtly sexual.
I'll say
So
that
I
it
would
comes
say
from the
the majority.
nightlife scene. I don't know that it comes from
Which
like a
is pretty sexual,
stripper scene,
yeah.
but like burlesque, like nightlife shows, sure. Like I'll agree to that. But I just want to make sure, because then if that's the case, we don't really have a problem with drag itself, right? We have a problem with instances.
No, I don't.
Okay.
I don't have any problem with drag. You going to do drag? That's fine. I just don't think it should be directed to
Right.
children.
So the actual problem, though, here is that you have these parents who, like Jingles, want to expose their children to diversity, but in doing that, they're willing to also expose their children to inappropriate sexual conduct. So the problem here is that they have this value, and they're allowing that value to override common sense in some cases, where they're bringing them to sexual environments that they really shouldn't be, and which frankly are not appropriate or good ways to expose them to this kind of diversity.
Right,
So
but
I'm really like,
wait. You
appreciate
gotta let her finish though.
Wait,
I'm finished. I'll let
Okay,
Jingles
now you
go.
finish.
You can
Okay,
go back and forth.
just making sure.
Yeah, so yeah, Todd, I appreciate that you're engaging in good faith, but we haven't established that it's sexual. This is like the tautology, like drag is sexual because it's sexual.
No. I'm not
We haven't
saying
established
all cases. I'm just saying there are certain cases which have become prominent, and they're examples of probably inappropriate behavior. So when you have like a young boy and you're having him like twerk for all of these men, and you're like giving him dollar bills, probably not an appropriate way to introduce children to the idea that they can be gender nonconforming. So that's the criticism that conservatives are having. They're saying that there's an inappropriate way to do this, and it's being done inappropriate in these cases.
I genuinely appreciate that you're trying to paint the best possible like Steelman argument from that. I genuinely appreciate it, but that's not their argument. Their argument isn't that individual cases.
That's my argument. Okay.
I know, and I
Just engage
appreciate
with
that.
me.
I know, I appreciate that. But you also said that the majority of conservatives are focused on these individuals.
Well, we
That's
can ask
not-
Conspiracy Castle on CTV and the Turk. Are you guys saying that like drag is always wrong, or are you saying that there are these instances which are inappropriate ways of showing people diversity and gender nonconforming behavior? What are you saying?
I feel like the language that the left is choosing to use is just not the right language to be using for what's happening, right? In the instances where you have a Mrs. Doubtfire dressed up like a grandma reading fucking stories to kids, right? If you say drag, you imply sex and gender in as a part of it. If you say it's cosplay, it could be anything. It could be
Well,
anime.
we just
it could be a
agreed that drag
character.
doesn't always mean sex, right? We
Well,
do agree
but
it
it
always
doesn't
means like
play-
gendered
You
cosplay.
can't-
In a way,
You
in a
can-
way, it does.
Well, now
You
it
can
feels like
gender
we're going
is
back
sex.
and forth.
Now we're
You can
somewhere
say-
different.
You
Like,
can
so-
say no. You can say that's why I read the definition, right? So you can say something different, but Merriam-Webster, which is like here's a dictionary, we're all going to use it, right? This is the gender is a part of the very definition, right? So like, there's no way you get away from that.
Okay,
So
but
what you
gender
need
doesn't
No
to do-
one's
mean
trying to get away
sex.
from the fact
Yeah.
that it's gender's not sex.
I made a
CTV.
joke that I didn't have ginger with you, or you didn't have ginger with my mom last night. That was kind of a joke, but it was also a real thing. Gender is not sex. And like your accusation is that it's sexual. That implies
The act of
because
sex,
the
yeah.
act
Well,
that people
you would
are
need
doing,
to know.
like we went all the way through all of this, right? So like
Yeah.
we're back at the square root of the language that the left is choosing to describe this thing needs to change so that it actually conveys the message that it wants to send to people, rather than trying to tell everybody else that understands drag as the sexual, all of these sexual acts that go along with it, which it does in the majority of fucking cases. You need to nuance your language and associate the Mrs. Doubtfire fucking hour, right?
No,
or whatever
man,
it is
you
you
need
want
to
to call
clarify
it.
your
In the
language.
definition
Away-
you read, though, CTV, that is
No.
allowed. The
Wait.
Mrs. Doubtfire interpretation is a valid interpretation of drag based on the definition you gave.
I want to wait. I want to
Yeah,
make sure.
it is.
Alex was trying to say something earlier. I want to make sure he gets to say something. And James, I saw you raise your hand a while ago. Did you still want to talk in a little bit? Okay, so Alex, and we'll see if we can bring it over to James at some point. Oh, and Turk, write your name down.
Well, I think gender is inherently sexual because you choose which gender you want to have sex with. And so I would think that, LGBTQIA, when you use that term, you're defining which gender you want to have sex with. It's not, that's how that's what you use to describe it.
Oh no! If gender
Yeah,
is inherently sexual, does having a
Yeah.
girls section in Walmart sexualize children with little pink dresses for
That's not
3-year-olds?
what he's
Does that
saying. He's
sexualize?
saying-
If
no,
gender is
I'm saying-
inherently
I'm saying if you're-
sexual,
I'm saying if you're a homosexual, you want to have sex with a male. If
do
you're
you
a male
think that
homosexual,
gender,
you want
the
to have
only
sex with a male.
context of
Wait,
gender
wait,
matters
wait,
is who you want to have sex with?
Wait, okay, please, 1 second. I can't hear what Alex is saying because you're talking over him. It's Alex?
I'm saying if you're a male homosexual, that means you want to have sex with the male gender, correct?
I'm very lost here, Alex. So to ask a clarifying question, maybe this is where we're losing you. I'm trying very hard here. Do you believe that there is a difference between gender and sexual orientation?
I think there is, but I think gender is a huge part of sex because if you're a homosexual male, you want to have sex with the male gender. You don't want to have sex with the female gender, correct?
You said
So gender
clearly-
can define who you want to have sex with. So it's inherently sexual.
You said clearly that gender is inherently sexual. So I'll ask you this. If Jangles has a son
Yes.
and that son is a boy and they identify as male, what is sexual about that?
Well, it would be who does the little boy want to have sex with? Does he want to have sex with female
Well, that's
gender or
sexuality,
male
not
gender?
gender.
Well, but I'm saying you
Ew.
have to pick a gender that you want to have sex with. Do you see what I'm
I'm
saying?
speechless.
Okay, hold on.
Wait.
You guys not understand what I'm saying?
Really
Hang on,
Wait,
Well, I'm
one
saying
second.
if you're a homosexual, you want to have sex with a male. So
I want to
wouldn't you
ask a
describe
really
male
basic
as a
question,
gender?
Alex. What does inherently
What
mean
is this
to you?
argument?
What does inherently mean to you, Alex?
I don't know how y'all don't understand what he's saying. I understand exactly.
I
No,
don't
what he's
because
understand
saying.
why you
I
don't
just
It
wanna
doesn't
know.
make any sense.
Wait. Okay.
feel
Since
like we have two different
wait,
definitions.
Wait. Okay. If there's confusion around what Alex is saying, I'm gonna give Alex some time to respond to it. And the first person who gets first dibs is explain what he's saying. Then the first person gets dibs is James because he's been waiting so long. And Turk, I still remember you, buddy. I'm sorry. Just so confusing.
Gender is a fundamental description of who you want to have sex with. If you're a gay homosexual male, you want to have sex with other men. So gender is important in assigning who you want to have sex with. So in that process, gender is sexual. If I'm as a heterosexual male, I want to have sex with a female gender. So that is important. That is
Just because
sexual.
something
That's
is a
who I want to have
component
sex
of
with.
something doesn't mean that it is something.
It's a huge component of it, is what I would
That
argue.
doesn't mean
It's
that
one of
it
the
is
biggest
it
parts.
regardless.
Just so then
My
just so I'm
heart is a
clear
huge
here.
component of my blood
I
system,
said-
but that doesn't mean my heart is my blood
Sorry.
system.
I said
You
James
couldn't live without your
I
heart.
said James would get first dibs. James.
I'm just trying to figure out why Primetime 99 is over here trying to have a deep conversation about who kids are deciding they want to have sex with.
You
You're
are using the
literally-
kids analogy.
No,
I'm not
I
using
didn't-
kids.
hey,
I don't want to
excuse me
talk
for
about kids
talking.
having sex.
Excuse me
You're
for
the one
talking
that
while
used
you're
that
interrupting,
analogy.
Alex. Excuse me for talking
Okay,
while you're
okay.
interrupting,
Okay,
Alex.
wait.
Because I never said
Alex,
something
no,
about
you
kids.
don't,
wait,
You made the
Alex.
example of Jangle's
No,
kid.
you don't.
I didn't
Stop.
make that, James.
Let's
No,
bring it
yes,
down.
you did.
I
Let's bring
didn't
it
talk
down.
about a
Yes,
kid.
you
Bring it
did.
You
down.
used the example of
Yes,
James.
Guys,
you
Dylan
did.
cannot scream.
Yes, you
Dylan
did.
In the
cannot scream.
description,
Cannot-
James,
okay,
you're
wait.
being
Alex.
ingenuous.
Okay,
You're
wait,
being
wait.
disingenuous.
No, I'm not.
In
Both
the
of you.
description,
Wait,
No, I'm not.
please.
In the
please,
example, you
please,
said
please,
Jangles.
Alex, Ali boy 99, primetime 99, Tucker Carlson's #1 guest. Please. Okay, I can't
Number
scream.
one.
Number one. I can't scream because other people are sleeping. It's like 4:30 a.m. over here. Okay? So I want James to finish his question. Don't worry, Alex. I'll let you be able to clear up any misconceptions about whatever he's saying about your point after, okay? And then I do want to bring it over to Turk. Joe, I saw you. Put your name down.
Okay, Alex literally made multiple references to if you're a boy and you're determining sex by gender of who you want to have sex with, you're literally sexualizing boys and girls in your quest to saying you shouldn't bring boys and girls to drag shows because it sexualizes them. And correct me if I'm wrong, the people who sexualize children are called answer number 1 on the board. Where's Rob Noor? This is his line. I feel like I'm stealing it. Never mind, you know what I'm saying.
Guys, I was using the example of Jangles. You guys said the exact example. I think it was Joe that might have said the example of if Jangle had a son. That's what I was talking about. I was just using the example that was given to me. I don't want to talk about, you're trying to entrap me. I don't want to sexualize kids at all. I was using the example that you were using, James. So let's be based in reality. Well, Joe used it. Joe, did you use that example when talking about Jangle's kids? Yes or no?
I don't think you answered the question. I can re-answer.
Did you bring up Jangle's kids? I'm asking, did you bring up the example? And did you say, yes, not me.
Yes.
So I use your example, bud. So the retard down here below me is trying to say that I did something. You're literally retarded, bud. Well, yeah, because he's an idiot. Because I didn't say that, Joe. You said that, and he's not blaming you for bringing up Jangle's kids. He's trying to lay that on me. It had nothing to do with me. I'm dealing with some retarded idiot below me that I don't like because you're so stupid. You don't even know what Joe just said because you're so dumb. I'm not triggered. You're just retarded and stupid.
I didn't say it. I said I didn't say it.
Joe said it, not me. I was using his example, bud. I was using his example. I was answering his question. It wasn't my analogy. It was his analogy, but you're too stupid to realize that.
I just think that if we
say the R word one more time, you get a free Slurpee. That's for 5. Okay, you hit 4. Okay, so Joe, I'll let you go, but I really want to bring it over to Turk, okay? Because Turk has been waiting very patiently.
So I'll remove the hypothetical to make sure this is a little bit simpler. Do you believe that gender is a fundamental descriptor to determine sexual orientation? Alex.
Yes, because how would I know who I want to have sex with if I can't define their gender?
If I am a lesbian, who am I attracted to?
Other women, female.
I'm a man.
Are you a homosexual man or heterosexual man?
I am a male lesbian. Who am I attracted to?
There's no such thing as a male lesbian.
Why?
Because lesbian is a term used for women that are attracted to the same sex.
How do we know that lesbian isn't used for men?
Dude, are you kidding, bud? Is this really your argument that you're trying to say lesbian
I'm
is?
asking you. Because you said that gender.
We know it because
you agreed that gender is a fundamental descriptor to determine.
If you're trying to play some sort of logic game and say you're a male lesbian, that doesn't exist. That's not a thing. A lesbian is a woman that is attracted to other women. If you're not smart enough to know that, then what's even the point of talking to you about this subject? Because you don't even know what a lesbian is.
No, but you said.
What's a lesbian, Joe? Then you tell me what a lesbian is if you're so smart. No, you tell me. I'd like to know. No, you're so smart. You have all these logic games. Why don't you describe what a lesbian is?
Alex, so the group can have it.
Yeah, Joe, what's
endlessly.
a lesbian?
What's a lesbian? What do you? I'm talking. I'm just trying to debunk all the weird stuff that he's saying.
The
a lesbian is a female attracted to another female. I'd like Joe to answer what a lesbian is.
3 times and you've asked it 5 times. Jesus Christ.
What's a lesbian?
May I request Alex to be muted so I can answer his question fully without interruption?
Okay, I know you cannot be muted, but I'm going to ask Joe Lewis to not be interrupted, please. And then I want to move it over to Turk, because Turk has been waiting. We got Turk, we got Taft, and we've got Jangles on the list.
Gotcha. So to make sure that my question was clear to you, I asked you that is gender a fundamental descriptor to determine sexual orientation? You said yes. I asked you that I'm a lesbian. What am I? And it appears like, based on your answer, that you don't need gender to be a fundamental descriptor to determine sexual orientation. That's what it sounds like to me.
Alex, if you wanted to respond to that, you could.
Yeah, I would like to respond. Can you tell me what a lesbian is?
Without including gender in your description?
Okay.
Joe.
Well,
We can,
you can't. You can't answer what a lesbian is, dude.
No,
that just shows you how smart you are. Not very. You can't even define what a lesbian is.
I can't get notifications and wait till them to pass. I'm trying to. So you are asking me, is it possible?
What's a lesbian, bud? Answer the question. Can you define it? I don't think you can.
Alex's point, which is not a good point, is that you can't define sexuality without an understanding of gender, right? So when you say, what is a lesbian? And he says that in order to be a lesbian, you need to be a woman. That's to his point, because his definition of lesbian includes a description of gender. I'm going to critique that point when it gets to me, but like, I don't know what your line of questioning is here.
Right,
it's not actually getting to it.
Right, because I wasn't complete with it, and I would love to complete these things with people answering questions initially. So if I were to say that I'm gay, who do you believe me to be attracted to?
Male gender, because you're a male.
I define lesbian as a gay woman. Is that wrong?
A gay woman would mean that you would be homosexual. You would like to be with the same sex, the same gender that you are. You're attracted to the same gender as you are.
So if I say I'm gay, I'm attracted to a man. But if somebody says that they are a gay woman, that means they are attracted to
a female.
Okay. Turk?
I don't honestly know how to kind of pivot back to the drag question, because there was a there was a question of like, where do certain conservatives stand when it comes to what is acceptable, what is not acceptable? And I believe that people, grown adults, are allowed to go and do that activity that they want. They can do it in places that are deemed socially acceptable. And I think that's the more pressing question to talk about and discuss tonight. The problem I have is if we're going to do that type of book story hour at a public library, we're now allocating a space publicly funded by the society that some societies might deem that as not acceptable. Whereas if we were to do anime story hour in that same location, society might deem that as acceptable and it could be okay. So I think is the better definition and argument that we can go across, because in a private domicile, it's like, yes, a private parent can bring their child to that event just as much as I would love to bring my child to a skeet shoot or bring my child to a deer hang, go gut a deer or something.
Earlier in the discussion, it feels like we said the only reason that people wouldn't want to bring kids to a drag story hour over an anime story hour was because of their perceptions of what drag is, not necessarily what the act itself is. So it's not necessarily, and we can, I guess, circle back to that if we need to now, but we're just going back to CTV's earlier point of changing the name, but not the act. Back. Say it again, CTV?
He said circle back.
I did, yes. Anyways, changing the name, not the act, is the issue there. It's the optics. It's not the actual act itself. Right, so it's not the drag itself.
This is part of the act itself because they're dressing up into a certain character in order to go and do an act. So that's part of the act. If they were going to just go and read, they would not need to be dressing in a particular set of attire to do
why would anime story hour be okay, but drag story hour not?
Because society has deemed anime dressing up like that in certain instances as acceptable. You know,
so
and then it's like the grades of drag. We can discuss it, like, you know, Mrs. Doubtfire might be acceptable to some communities.
Right. So the problem isn't the act, it's the perceptions, right?
Yeah, it's
well, everything is always everything always comes down to perception.
The issue here, the reason I'm being, I'll let you in. Let me just really quickly say the only reason that I care about that part is because we're not saying there's something intrinsic to the act itself that is wrong. And if that's the case, then doing drag in the way that we would see somebody do like anime cosplay or akin to it would be fine.
Well,
Go ahead.
Drag is considered a performance, right? So going in drag to a story hour is the performance, and some people might not accept that as being acceptable in a public
right. But it's not because of the act itself. It's just because of our
Who
perception.
cares what people think? People can think things that are wrong.
Because
people
my
can
tax
think
money
things are
pays
good.
for it.
No, okay. So then actually make an argument. Don't just like defer the responsibility of making an argument to be like, well, some people might think it's bad. If you think it's bad, prove that it's bad. And I can prove that certain acts of like children being involved with drag are bad. When the drag is like explicitly sexual and is explicitly involving the child, I don't think that's appropriate. So we discussed some of these examples earlier. I think those examples are bad for the act themselves, not because they're called drag, but because sexualizing children, having a child twerk in front of you and paying him like dollar bills to do so, that's sexual and that's inappropriate. And it's inappropriate whether you call it drag or bungus or whatever, right? So it is the act in that case.
Yeah,
I just want to go to Alex's point really quickly as well. Gender and discussing gender is not inherently sexual. Just like discussing gender or playing with gender is not inherently sexual. In fact, like you could show someone like a diagram, I think, of genitalia, and I don't think that would be inherently sexual. So much of it is dependent on the context in which it's brought up. So there's sexual ways to talk about gender, and there's non-sexual ways to talk about gender. But when you model, for example, gender roles to a child, when you say to a child, it's the man's responsibility to take care of the house, to set, his world in order, to take care of his woman, to pay for her things, and to support his family, that's a discussion of gender, but it's not a sexual one. So I think that you as a conservative should be able to see that there are ways to navigate discussions of gender or, portrayals of gender that aren't sexual. But they can also be sexual sometimes. And drag is a good example where oftentimes people have already agreed in this discussion, usually drag is sexual. It's started as an adult art form in nightclubs, and it's highly involved with lots of sexual dancing, lots of, risque outfits, because it's a kind of self-expression of taboo subjects in society. So of course it's going to be associated with sexuality. That's why it's often inappropriate to bring children to them, but not always. Again, not always, not inherently, but oftentimes.
Yeah, performances involving a sexual aspect can be a thing, but just in the same way that they can involve other aspects. When I say that, like, I agree that it's like a part of nightclub culture, I'm specifically not saying that it's like sexual, because I don't think going to a nightclub is in itself sexual. I think there are things that are sexual.
Should go to a nightclub.
Whoa! Come on, Rhizome. Come on, bro.
I've seen children at nightclubs all the time.
Hold on, no.
I DJ private events and main events.
I gotta call bullshit. Okay.
Yeah, people don't go to a nightclub to dance, or
they go to the club to dance probably because like they're getting warmed up to be able to cap off the fucking night. The hell are you talking about?
What kind of dancing goes on
as a
at those types of nightclubs?
DJ that does private events and as DJ that does nightclubs, I reject this assertion that you guys believe that nightclubs are inherently sexual. There's a ridiculous claim to make, but it's okay. I'll have the DJ.
I'd like to address something that Toph said. Again, Toph, the actual voice that I'm glad is here.
Sure.
So a lot of things you said were incredible, but you also kind of acknowledged factually that gender is different than sex. And I am going to make the argument that the core tenet of drag is an expression, a performance of gender. And if we both agree that gender is separate from sex, it's very easy to make a form of drag that is just about an expression of gender without sexuality. Of course, sexuality can be a component of it. It can be an important component of it. And depending on the age, like you can change the sliders of how sexual it is for to be age appropriate. So all of us agree that is a thing. For Alex, the reason, the core of that whole kerfuffle that we got into is that you said gender is inherently sexual, which led to the very reasonable follow-up question. Well, do kids have genders? Do like boys and girls sections at Walmart? Is that sexualized? Because that's gendered. That's why we kind of were memeing on you for a little bit.
Oh, Jangles, describe to me who you like to have sex with without using gender.
This doesn't make it inherent.
Okay, so
I'm
you know
asking
how
you a question. Describe who you like to have sex with without using gender.
Okay, I like to have sex with one man. Now, you know how a square...
You just said man, gender.
Yeah, I know. Do you know how like a square...
Hold
on, no. Yeah, well, do you know how like a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle doesn't have to be a square. So when you're describing sexuality, you do have to use gender. But here's the weird part. I don't know why you're so confident.
I mean, how disingenuous can you be if you
that's not what it means,
Alex. Are your dogs boys or girls?
My dog's a girl.
You want to fuck them?
No, I don't want to have
Are you
sex.
describing who you want to fuck? You like to fuck girls?
Girls, humans. See, you're comparing apples and oranges, but my girl dog does like to have sex with male dogs to breed. Do you see?
All right, you sexualize your dogs. Fantastic.
No, I'm saying if I wanted to breed my dog, this is why. If I wanted to breed my dog, I would have to have a female dog and a male dog. So gender would matter in that example, bud. So once again, you're debunked. You can't even have sex with. You can't even describe who you want to have sex with without using gender.
Of course I can't. What do you think the argument is? Wrong. Dude, can you describe the gender of a 2-year-old without sexualizing them? Is that possible?
So wait, I could just give an example really
what
quick.
Is your
wait. The question was directed towards Alex, so I do want to give him an opportunity to respond.
I'm saying who you have a sexual attraction to. If you're talking about kids, they shouldn't have a sexual attraction until they're of age. But I'm talking about who you're sexually attracted to. You cannot define who you're sexually attracted to without using gender. That's
what if you want to fuck everybody? Does personhood become sexual?
If you're a pansexual, yeah.
That means like if you want to fuck everybody and you have no gender preference, does that make being human inherently sexual at that point? Because there's a sexuality that uses it in its definition.
If you want to have sex with other humans, yes. But if you're some weirdo that wants to have sex with trees or something like that, I mean, I guess you could argue necrophilia, or but I do think gender is a huge part of sex because you.
Yeah, what I would say where I differ from you, Alex, is I think that
a dead body, whatever.
What I think where I differ from you is that we use that quality of humanity in the definition of pansexuality, but it's not inherent to. It doesn't have to become sexual because it's used in the definition of something.
Then what does pansexual mean? Then what does pansexual mean if it's not a sexual term?
No, it is a sexual term, but the things that are used in the definition don't become inherently sexual.
It's sexual because it's a description of how people engage with sex, not because it has a gendered term within it. So we use gendered terms for lots of non-sexual discussions, which indicates to us. Well, indicates
just like there can be a drag show that's not sexual, but you cannot have sex. You cannot have a whatever your sexual proclivity without using gender.
I genuinely don't understand how you're not getting this. I genuinely don't understand.
Who you want to have sex with without stating the person's gender?
But the gender part isn't the part that makes it sexual, right?
You have to have the gender part to know who you want to have sex with as a definition.
Yes. But that's not the part that makes the definition sexual, right?
Why did some of y'all start talking about breakfast though?
We're gonna let Tav finish quickly.
Probably.
Pansexual.
The reason why these definitions are sexual and related to sexual topics is because they are describing sexual relationships, right? Not because they have a gender term within their definition. Because there's lots of gendered terms within lots of different definitions that aren't sexual. And there's lots of ways to use like gendered language without being sexual. You know this, of course, like I don't think that you really believe that like using the word boy or man is always sexual. I don't think you believe that.
I agree with it. It's not always sexual, but let's talk about pride. What are you proud of? You're proud of who your sexual orientation is, correct?
Usually, yeah, or your gender identity.
Yes. So wouldn't that inherently mean that you have to have gender in order to know who you're sexually attracted to? So don't you think gender plays a big part?
It's a component part of sexual.
A big component,
yes.
Correct?
But it's not the part that makes it sexual.
Yeah.
Like for example, Alex, if I say that like all chairs like can have legs, right? That doesn't mean that all legs are now part of chairs. Does that make sense?
I understand the nuance of that, but you guys are trying to compare apples and oranges. You cannot use gender without describing who you want to have sex with.
Okay, the whole thing started with this question they never got answered.
It's
important.
Okay, I just want to go ahead,
Alex. Yeah. Okay, Alex, what started this whole thing, you made the claim that gender is inherently sexual. And I asked the question, is having a boys and girls section of clothing at Walmart sexualizing those kids? Because if gender is inherently sexual...
It's separating the clothes based on sex.
Is it sexualizing them? Would you
I
feel
mean, some
comfortable
dresses
saying
for
that?
young kids could be sexualized. Yeah, there's clothes. at
Is it
Walmart that's
inherently sexual?
inappropriate.
The fact that because gender is inherently sexual, which is what you said. A boys and girls clothing section at Walmart is inherently sexualizing.
You can't
children.
have sex. You can't have sex without gender. So that's why it's a big.
Can you answer? Okay, answer the question. Is having a gendered section in Walmart sexualizing kids? There's an easy answer. The answer is no.
Yes, it is. No, it is because you're separating by sex. You're saying
You're
one is
sexualizing.
the male section. And
That's what
one
you
is
mean
the
by
female
sexualizing.
section. I think it's possible that.
Okay, I'm done.
Alex, I have a question. I'm like, and I'm being honest here. I'm being real with you here right now. I'm not trying to drag.
Been
you
honest
across
one
coals.
time, Joe, but go ahead. You can't even decide what a lesbian is. I haven't been honest.
I did.
What's a lesbian then? If you're so honest, what's a lesbian?
A gay woman.
Okay, so who is she attracted to?
If a gay woman is attracted to a woman.
Okay, so is a woman a gender?
Woman's gender, yes.
So do you need gender to define who you are sexually attracted to?
You need the qualifier of gay to signify where that direction
You need
goes.
a qualifier of their gender to know who you're having.
I need gay, which is a sexual orientation. And if I say if someone is gay, that's a sexual orientation. And I say woman, that's a gender. Those two together make it so that a gay woman.
You're trying to
is
say that
attracted to a
gender
woman.
and sex have no relation whatsoever, and I disagree with you. And so we're just going.
You said that gender is inherently sexual. So my question to you
gender,
is
you have to have gender in order to describe who you want to have sex with.
This is why I asked you what inherently means to you. It seems like you're operating on a different definition of inherent than the rest of us.
Based in reality. What do you mean? I mean,
inherent means intrinsic too, that you cannot have it without.
Yes, you cannot have a sexual orientation without knowing the gender you're attracted to.
But you can have gender without having something that is sexualized or a sexual component.
It's possible, but I'm saying you cannot have sex.
If that's possible, that's all we're saying. Hey, if that's possible,
you can't have
that's
a
all we're
sexual
saying.
identity without knowing what gender you're attracted to.
You just admitted it's possible, so that's all. That was it. That was it.
Do you understand my point? You cannot know who you're sexually attracted to without using gender. Do you guys agree on that?
No, Alex. So let me ask you this. I'm saying this genuinely.
Yes, we agree on that.
No, I'm demisexual. Who am I attracted to?
Yeah, actually, there are different.
You're attracted to the male and female sex, so you're attracted to multiple genders.
I'm attracted to somebody who I feel that I can have a close bond with. That is somebody who I am attracted to. That is definitively who I am. I am demisexual. So who am I attracted to?
But demisexual means you're not attracted to any genders whatsoever?
I am attracted to people.
Means he's attracted to both in different circumstances.
Okay, so you would need gender to describe who you're sexually attracted to.
What is required for Joe to be interested in somebody?
Explain what a demisexual is, because I don't know. I'm not familiar. What's a demisexual?
A good relationship. The relationship precedes the relationship. The friendship or the connection or
the connection
history.
I have supersedes the gender.
It's like partially asexual, so the romance is more.
Oh, you're asexual, so you don't have sex.
No,
so
I'm not asexual. I'm demisexual.
It's like halfway. So demi is like half. So basically, he's saying that like the romantic aspect is more important than the sexual aspect for him.
And for me,
Alex, it's like if you and I are hanging out having a glass of wine in our bathrobes, and I start looking over you, and I'm like, we both like animals. We both like sitting by the fireplace. I'm kind of digging Alex, right? We have like a prior connection already. That's what it requires for Joe to get into somebody, not just like, oh, this is like a hot dude or a hot girl or something.
And just to
you're
be clear,
sexually attracted to all your friends, Joe?
No, I'm attracted to my girlfriend. But
you have a girlfriend?
Yes.
Well, how do you describe her? As a girl? As by her gender?
She's my girlfriend.
I'm just saying use gender as the first
for 30 minutes.
I'm just saying using gender as the first descriptor of the person.
Because y'all won't go back to the original topic.
But all of a sudden now you're saying you're a demisexual, yet you have a girlfriend. So I mean, go figure, bud. I think.
Yeah, let's just go back to the original topic.
So the question I wanted to ask you, Alex, because specifically is if you, hypothetically speaking, you are the head of the library. You're the head librarian, and there is
all these hypotheticals are so stupid. But go ahead. Sorry.
There is an event on your calendar that says Drag Queen Story Hour. How would you ensure, as the head librarian, that it is appropriate and qualifies under not being sexual? What would you tell the staff who is going to run that Drag Queen Story Hour?
You couldn't show any sort of sexual organs, breast or buttocks. You couldn't read any sort of material that is sexual inherently and that has any sexual themes. And that's how, I guess those are the two things I would cover. Is there would be, no explicit breasts or butt exposure and no sexual themes in the book that they read.
How far is explicit breast exposure for you?
Cleavage.
What?
Yeah. Turk wants to
Where
grab
is
this
that?
question.
I
think
mean, that's
Turk
an ant. We can take that answer.
I'll
Joe.
take it. I'll
Cleavage,
take it.
yeah.
We'll take it. We can move on.
Joe, if it comes down to setting a standard and what is acceptable, it's definitely got to come down to the community, because you could go to San Francisco in the exact same instance and they would say, go for it, full DRAG, go full blown, go all the way. But if you go somewhere down in East Texas, they're going to say Mrs. Doubtfire plus like additional coverings or something, man. That's why it goes back to my original statement. It's not that drag is bad. It's because where is it acceptable and what level of that is acceptable for being in front of children in a public place.
Okay, fuck it. This is actually where this conversation should be. So, you weren't here for my opening statement, but what I said was it is very important to describe acts as sexual, because labels, my entire point was that if something is queer, it is inherently seen as sexual, despite the fact that the act itself is not. It would not be seen as sexual in other contexts. So that's why it's very, very important to describe the act rather than the label, because that's what is actually sexual.
And some societies don't deem the act of doing drag and story hour combined as being inappropriate. When you go into other societies, it's entirely inappropriate, and it's based on the society's acceptance of that type of lifestyle in that type of event and presentation. So,
of course, but the entire
Texas, I think most of these forms of drag are not appropriate for children.
Okay, but the entire impetus is is kissing someone sexual?
It can be, yes.
Certainly, it can be. Are there forms of kissing that are appropriate to show to kids?
In certain types of age groups,
answers obviously
yes.
Yeah, you can see mom and dad kissing. You can see a couple kissing. But let's take a recent example. Same-sex kiss in Buzz Lightyear was deemed sexual. It was deemed grooming, even, because conservatives just want to lie about what grooming means. That was my original point. I normally hate whataboutisms. In this case, it is about finding the variable that someone deems inappropriate or someone deems sexual. So we really have to get to the bottom. It was a great question. At what level? Like, what level are you able to show boobs where it becomes sexual?
Right.
That's a really good question.
And going to Buzz Lightyear specifically, we're towing into that as a society. Is that acceptable and is it not acceptable? There's many people in the conservative space that don't care. They want to go see Buzz Lightyear because it's a good movie. They look past what happened because it doesn't really impact anything, and it's not a relevant thing. Drag time story hour could be completely relevant to what they're wanting to do with children.
Yeah, but you also understand that, like, it's the queer that makes it sexual, not the act. And so it's the connotations with queer that people have based on, like,
I think it definitely enhances the society's stigma towards it. That could be part of it. Yeah,
that is true. But you see how it's disingenuous to describe the exact same act as sexual or non-sexual based on the label that you put upon it. That's why I thought it was really, really weird how the exact same thing, exact same costume of the exact same person reading to children would be deemed sexual if it were called drag, but non-sexual if it were called anime or something. You know, there's actually some crossover between like drag and anime. So that's kind of like what I'm looking at. That's my original accusation, and it seems to be playing out. Like, we have to look at the act. What makes something sexual? Everyone agrees that we shouldn't show like explicitly sexual things to kids. We shouldn't like be exposing them to hardcore pornography at a young age. I think all of us would agree that that's
and softcore pornography, all pornography. Make that clarification.
Yeah, whatever. All of us would agree with that. The entire place that this conversation should be is what is sexual. And I will not buy the argument that something the exact same act but queer is more sexual than a non-queer version of that same act. I won't accept that.
And you know what? I'm willing to see. I would really wish because I'm a dumb conservative here in Texas. I don't understand all these definitions y'all are flinging out. I would love to see like this timeline or paradigm of like what is acceptable forms of drag. You know, you've got super duper conservative drag, and you've got moderate centrist drag, and then you've got extreme leftist drag.
You got Bugs Bunny drag in the 50s.
I mean, you
got Rudy Giuliani drag.
Because like you're asking this question of like, if it's queer, does it inherently become sexual? And I think that with cross-dressing specifically, it is something that a lot of people strongly associate with sexual fetish. And it's because there are people who have a sexual fetish for cross-dressing. So like an analogy would be is it inherently sexual to wear like a dog mask in public? And the answer is no. Like, you can wear a dog mask in public and have it not be sexual. There are ways to do that. But people associate it with sexuality because there are people who like to wear dog masks as part of like puppy play, and that's sexual for them. So I think that's why people, specifically with cross-dressing, end up viewing it as sexual, because they know that there are people out there who have a sexual fetish for cross-dressing, and they're worried that even if it's like relatively innocuous, that it might have some sexual undertone. So I think
they view it
that's
that way
their
when
worry.
they call it cross-dressing, though, but not cosplay or dress up. Or
I think they
something like
would,
that.
yeah. I think legitimately, like, you know, if
I think
you
the
called it
phrase-
cosplay tomorrow, conservatives would still have the same issue.
Yeah,
I
I
want to
think
make sure
the
Would you
James
be
understands.
okay?
Just
So
real quick,
would you be
10
sure.
seconds and I'll be quiet. 10 seconds and I'll be
Mhm.
quiet. But you do see how, like, because some people see it as sexual, therefore we shouldn't allow it, is very easily abused. Some people find feet sexual, therefore no sandals, because some people do it for sexual strategy. You
But
see
put
how
it
that's
on the
very
other
easily
shoe.
abused.
People walking around with guns and stuff due to open carry could be deemed as violent, where it's not, and that's a small minority of people.
But it would be inappropriate, Jangles. I think you would agree if there was like an adult who was like ogling children's feet because they're in sandals, or was getting off by like wearing sandals in public. Now, I agree. I don't think that's something you can legitimately legislate, but like, I think we would agree that like socially, culturally, we should discourage people from engaging in that sort of behavior. So
Alex, don't give
we're
it to
getting
them for free. Those are the money makers right there.
we're getting a little bit away from the actual topic, but like,
Yes, we are.
I think that is like the heart of the criticism, is because this kind of cross-dressing, it's queer, but I don't think that like it's necessarily more sexual because it's queer. I think it's more sexual because it is a sexual fetish for people.
Well, you're basically saying it's more sexual because it's viewed as more sexual.
No, because some people have it as a sexual fetish, is why it's more sexual.
And you understand why that's not a very
No,
good
I would
argument.
say it's still more sexual because of the actions that end up being displayed as a part of the caricature of drag itself, right?
Well, like, I would also
It
say
goes-
that like I don't
because
think
it
we
goes-
should ban cross-dressing or something in public. Like,
Well, I mean, that's
to be
what
clear.
yeah, but that's how drag came to be, right? Like, are we not going to acknowledge that drag came to be because it was explicitly illegal to dress in clothing of the opposite gender, and on top of that, we were deeply segregated when ball culture was at its peak. So these things came out of necessity from those communities. And
but Shakespeare used to, the actors in Shakespeare would dress up in drag, so it wasn't that illegal.
I'm talking about specifically ball culture and the history of drag. That it was explicitly
So different
because-
cultures, it's been illegal, and certain cultures, it's been legal.
No, that's not necessarily what's being engaged right now.
Ball culture is a specific ball culture, like dance hall ball, like,
masquerade ball culture. And what I'm saying is that what we know as drag today came from black and I hate to say it, but black and brown communities, where these were people who were segregated, and these were also people who were subjected to laws that made it impossible for them to express their gender expression. So they used ball culture as an opposition to those two things: the objection to TLDR, to segregation, and the objection to the restrictions to expressing your gender identity.
So the only thing that I'm hearing you say here, Joe, right, is because the balls over here in the Wolfpack chat are associated with the sub badges. If you want to be a part of ball culture, you need to come over to CTV's channel and subscribe. Is that what you just said?
No.
That certainly sounds like what you just said. If you want to be a part of ball culture, you got to have some balls, right?
Actually, quick reminder here, everybody. Just a reminder for the general audience: when you go to sub to CTV, your reminder: CTV voted for and supported Donald Trump, who paraded around with Rudy Giuliani dressed in drag as Giuliani sat on his lap, kissed him, and then married him in a public ceremony. Just a reminder that CTV supports and votes for people who participate in sexual drag performances.
Hey.
CTV, everybody. CTV.
Hey, as
Give it
long
up.
as it's adults, I'm all good with it. Adults can do what they want. It's whatever you.
There were children there. There were children there. There were children there.
Yeah, I want to take James's criticism here as a main sticking point, because it gets brought up in all these contexts. Is like, what is family friendly? If kids are there, is that event deemed family friendly? Because a lot of the LA, because a bunch of the LA Pride stuff, it was not marketed as family friendly, but families were there. TV shows are not rated for certain things, but kids can watch it. It's like,
yeah, I actually view it exactly as that. Like, I view it as like a parent doesn't know whether or not a TV show is appropriate for their kid and lets them watch it anyways.
And one of the things that's very explicitly clear at events, especially at Pride events, for instance, is making sure that there are things that are very clear that are appropriate for children and for all ages, and then there are things that where it's inappropriate, right? So these categories exist. What we do see, however, is parents sometimes to no fault of their own, maybe being put into situations where a family-friendly space might enter into a non-family friendly space. And this could be communication from staff, this could be a miscommunication from event personnel, and this is a common thing that happens. Like, you can be just casually at a restaurant minding your own business, and then that restaurant could change over to something that is 18 plus. And sometimes what should happen is that you have event staff, I'm saying event staff, people who work at the place, go up there and say, hey, we're actually switching to a private event. Can you please move over to this area? And some people follow that and some people don't.
So if that sort of a scenario happens, because I saw Libs of TikTok post it, there's a restaurant that's out in the outdoors area, and then someone that's dressing in drag like goes through the center of it and is like shaking everything, and like, I don't remember what mannerisms they did. They got handed money by kids and stuff. At that point, would we expect the venue to say, hold up, we got to make sure the kids are approving and accepting of this, or is this now deemed a family friendly environment? That's the gray area where a lot of the societal discourse is happening, and where a lot of people are getting caught up in, is this appropriate or not for my kids to be?
Yeah, the liability is on the venue to provide a show that they say they're going to provide, right? And to like make sure things that they say are going to happen in private are staying in private and not going on to into public space. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with that.
Yeah, as somebody who's worked at events, and I still work at events, that's part of my income, is that there are situations where you run into things like that, where people will take 20 seconds of a situation, and there's an entire context before it, and there's a entire context after that it occurs. And it is up to the venues to make sure they set the record straight.
And it's also very important, if you're accusing someone of sexually grooming children, which I feel like that is like the main issue here. People are accusing drag queens and other queer people of sexually grooming children. You have to have better arguments than tipping. Tipping is not inherently sexual. That is a variable that is not inherently sexual.
It's rewarding someone for something.
CTV, you know it's not
busking, true. Yeah. Like, no, it's not sexual.
When you all talk and ask questions at the same time, it allows me to be the ability.
So basically,
is busking,
when you're in a night, when you're
sexual.
Hold on, just instead of doing that, Joe, I think we can just offer a position. Like, when you're at a venue like a bar and you have somebody who's hired talent, like a musician or some kind of performer, like a comedian or something like that, typically the venue itself doesn't handle tips for that person, and it's up to the performer, like, to either like sell merch or take tips or however they're going to do it. Maybe they have a hat, like if you're a musician on a stage and you got a hat at the foot of the stage, but the bar does not usually like take on the like onus to handle the tips for the performer. And it can also get like dodgy if that were the case, because people could think like the bar was doing something like fishy or something like that if they were taking a percentage. So that's just how that is. It's just tipping for the performance.
Yeah, but the sexualized nature of it, right, and how the money ends up being accepted is where, like, it crosses the line of appropriateness for children.
Well, yeah, so we can agree if things are going into, things are going into a G-string, sure, they're bad, but from what I've seen, I've just seen people, like, get money put into their hands, so.
You have to make the argument that handing someone else a dollar bill is inherently a sexual act.
I don't have to make a damn argument.
You're making the positive claim
to tell you that I think that it's inappropriate for children to be handing people dressed in drag, and they're acting and dancing in a sexualized manner.
Okay.
Okay, but then it's the dancing that's sexual, not the money.
Where did the children get the money?
But it's not about the money
Their
and the
parents.
No, where did they get it? Alex got it. They got it from the parents.
Wait. Stop. James. James, you gotta let Turk. Yeah, you ask a question. If you meant I didn't actually mean to ask you a question, then don't actually do it, because when you ask somebody a question, they're gonna try to respond. Then you shout over them the answer. It's just gonna mess with the flow. So I want Turk to be able to respond to that.
So I have kids. I hand them money to go and do things, and sometimes they do really stupid things. Right. The entire point of a tip is to reward someone for an action or a task or a job that they did that you thought was acceptable, and they did a good job. If a kid is handing a tip to a person in drag for their performance, they are being trained, get based. What's the best way to say this? They're being reinforced in an action that's reinforcing another person's action based on the environment that they're in. So if it was drag story hour and it's Mrs. Doubtfire and she's like, okay, thank you for letting me read the what's the one with the tree, the giving tree, and the child hands her or him, what, I don't even know the gender or whatever now, because y'all are confusing.
It's usually referred to by the performance.
It's like, that's, I think, okay. But if someone's coming around to a table and like they lift their shirt and like they stuff it into the bra, that inherently can be sexual because of how the tip is being done, and it's reinforcing.
Okay, but you see how far you had to stretch it. Like, first of all, it was tipping as sexual.
I don't think he's stretching things. I think he's just giving
examples to the issue at hand.
So the issue at hand was in this specific event, kids were indeed tipping drag queens by handing them dollars, and you described that as potentially sexual. But in order to like provide an example of something that's actually sexual, you had to stretch that to a completely different event. And this is what's kind of frustrating about this.
It can be sexual if they're tipping for a sexual act.
Okay, so but we are not agreeing that drag is inherently sexual. In fact, we explicitly agree that it's not.
And that's why I used the drag time story hour. We didn't even claimed that reading it and giving the tip for that action might not be unacceptable.
Yeah, I think we might be misunderstanding Turk, because Turk's just been asking like what we consider family appropriate and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah.
Am I right, Turk? Like that seems like what you're trying to ascertain.
And that goes to my premise. It's like, what does society deem as acceptable? Should we be funding these sorts of actions that are going against what society wants? And that's why I'm like, if a society thinks that this drag time story hour is acceptable, parents should be able to bring their kids to it.
Okay, but what do you think?
I think it's difficult for Jangles.
That doesn't matter to this particular discussion.
What matters is you're invited to share your opinion.
Wait. Tap, you got to let Turk finish. If he starts a sentence, I want to hear the end of it. Turk.
So, you know, I could give you my opinions on things. My opinions don't really direct the aggregate statistical support of to or for society. I would rather talk more in terms of the conservative movement, right? As a person of the conservative movement, that sort of action probably is not deemed socially acceptable. I can talk to that, but but
I'm asking
on the matter is not really relevant here.
I'm asking about your opinion because I'm interested in your opinion. So I want you to like make a stance and stand by it. Like, what do you think? Do you think this is inappropriate or not? And where do you draw the line?
I definitely think that is not appropriate. I would not bring my kids to that sort of an event.
To drag queen story hour?
Correct. I've got kids. I'm trying to not use terms too often because I got kids that are asleep.
Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to know, is that that's your view, that drag queen story hour is not appropriate.
Based.
Okay, so just really quickly, the issue that I think me and Jangles have with like agreeing that, or just with some of the way that we're framing things, is that Jangles, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not trying to accept the premise that those things are actually happening, but it's rather like a bunch of misinformation around like what is actually happening in those performances that like gives people these perceptions.
It's the mislabeling of something as inherently sexual, but then it's not able to back it up. Again, I don't like whataboutism, but if you have that exact same scenario in other situations, when straight people do it, it's not deemed sexual, but it seems when you introduce an element of queer identity, then it becomes sexual.
No, I think that, like we pointed out, the examples, you're just refusing to want to see them, right? We point to money being handed, in a strip club nature, right?
Hold on. Stop. How about that? One at a time. One at a time.
Jangles.
One at a time.
Yeah. He's the only one.
No, 1 point at a time.
One item on the list at a time.
Now, since I had the mic and I'm speaking, there's been a lot of examples that have already been pointed out. Just because you refuse to acknowledge them doesn't mean that they haven't been given out to you. So either A, you start being a part of the genuine part of this conversation, which is we are telling you that these things are associated with these things over here, right? And you can understand that instead of just saying, no, it's not because of all this over here, blah, 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 right?
I'm engaged. Do you want me to engage with your point directly?
Inconsistent.
Do you want me to engage with that point directly? You said money being handed in a strip club like nature. You have to make the argument that handing someone else a dollar bill is inherently sexual. You have not done that. You have failed to do that.
In
You
a
have made the
strip club
assumption.
environment where they're
In a strip club
dancing sexually, that's what makes the tipping sexual.
No,
So
he said explicitly in a strip club nature. I don't know what the fuck that means. So
It means dancing sexually.
CTV.
Yeah, you're rewarding them from it. That it would imply.
I want CTV to answer that. What does strip club nature mean to him in this context? Like, to the best of your ability, please.
When you've got people dressed provocatively, moving sensually in a, I don't know, you got a neon sign in the background that might say something to the effect of, it's not going to lick itself,
So
right? That might be a good indicator, right? That
I agree. Yeah, I think this would be enough to indicate that the environment is sexual.
A strip club nature. So double entendres, yeah, I agree that's inappropriate. But that's not that doesn't automatically say, oh, now it is sexual. Now it's a strip club environment. A strip club environment.
You don't think
correct me if I'm wrong. Can I get everyone to agree on this?
To
make it a strip club environment.
You don't think that's weird? You don't think that's weird?
He just said it was.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
Jangles, can we wrap this up? We're like getting on this topic for almost we're going on like an hour and 30 minutes, hour and 45, 2 hours on this topic. So I want to make sure we can get past it. So Jangles, I'm gonna have you just like wrap us up, then we're gonna do any statements, okay?
Okay, cool. Fuck. So a strip club nature, like, correct me if I'm wrong, stripping is probably a pretty important core component of strip clubs, right? So in order for this to be of a strip club nature, you would have to be rewarding someone for taking their clothes off in order to arouse you. That's why I think it's disingenuous. And when you accuse me of not following along, no, I was. You just didn't do a good job justifying something. We're looking at variables here, trying to identify what is the thing, and you go back on circular logic. It's sexual because it's drag, because drag is sexual, and it's sexual because it's drag. It's the entire circular logic of it. Handing someone a dollar bill is not inherently sexual. Drag queens are not inherently strippers, not stripper-like. So I don't know. I've been really disappointed in this entire life.
Well, that's only because you're so desensitized to sex. Just the simple act of looking up a girl's skirt can sexually arouse somebody that hasn't seen it before. So the idea that young kids that have never seen sex before are super sensitive to it, so they could be sexually aroused with just cleavage, with just a bikini cut underwear. But because you've been desexualized, you feel like they have to strip naked or they have to actually go full throttle.
If I've been desexualized, that means you're sexualizing these kids. You're explicitly doing that right now.
I'm saying you're desensitized to sex. So in order for you to be turned on, you need more hardcore.
You have accused gay people and queer people of being groomers, and now you're inherently talking about what kids might be sexually turned on by in this conversation.
I'm saying they are they're more sensitive, less desensitized. So that's why going to a drag show is not good for them to see. I can remember my first sexual experience like it was yesterday. Now I've had a lot of sexual experiences since then that I forgot about. Why is that? Because it's called sexual implantation. Your first memories of sex are a lot stronger than the ones you have on later on in life. So that's why it's important to protect kids from this, because those sexual memories are a lot stronger. Similar to sexual abuse or sexual trauma that a kid faces that they can never forget. So that's why it's important to protect kids when they are most sensitive to it and keep them away from it. It's just that simple, bud.
What age do you think people should be exposed to sex then?
Age of consent in that state, I guess. I mean, that's the best answer I can give you. Like whatever, around 16 or 17, whenever the legal age is, when they should be, they should learn about it, sex ed and all that stuff in school.
It's funny because in the GOP platform, they said 21. So I'm good.
Okay.
I'm not the GOP platform. You know that, right, Joe?
I'm just saying it's interesting. It's unrelated. It's just interesting.
Okay. We're going to do wrapping up on this topic. So everybody's going to have like 30 seconds, 45 seconds max to do an ending statement. And we're going to start with our lovely last second replacement who helped me out here, Turk.
Third topic or no?
The thing is, we didn't put a third topic there to begin with. So the only third topic I think of obviously would be Roe v. Wade, but nobody did prep for that. So I don't think anybody really wants to do that.
Anybody do prep for this? People prep for this debate?
Yeah, I was just asking if we were doing
obviously not.
And outros is kind of.
Does everybody want to wrap it up here?
I
Please
think we
Yeah.
had
have
a
a
nice
fucking Christ.
discussion. I think it's good to just leave it at a good high point.
Roe v. Wade will be next week then. Turk, yep. Ending statement and outro.
Yeah, so I'm glad I actually had to have a fruitful conversation. I'm glad that actually I could converse with people that do not agree with me. I'm glad that people were not rudely interrupting me. But that's a story for another day. I didn't know what the topic was coming in. I was just subbing in. But I thanks Dylan and Danabo for hosting and all that good stuff. I'm in a weird spot as a conservative. This is going under what I said last week. It's like, I understand that people have the right to raise their kids the way that they want to raise them. Jangles, I feel your situation, and I don't think you shouldn't have that right to get that experience. However, forcing it upon the entire society or the local community in order to get warm fuzzies from few with the public resources is definitely place for legitimate discussion, and we have to hash that out, and we have to come to a compromise as to what is acceptable, what is not acceptable in the community. And that's, I think, the honest conversation that needs to happen. I appreciate the conversation of like what is inherently sexual about this action. It kind of moved me a little bit, but I'm not entirely convinced. And I would like to see kind of this condemnation of sexual acts of drag across the community, because when I talk to people like CSP, Communities Crowdsource Politics, he says it's never sexual. And this panel, I think I've heard from several people, thinks that it is. I don't know a percentage or whatever, but I wish y'all would correct y'all selves when y'all are talking about these types of topics, because I don't want to have to refer them to Dylan's panel, because that's bad advertising.
Toft?
Okay, yeah, I think that the fundamental disagreement in almost every little round of confrontation that we had in this topic was some person on one or the other side not understanding the idea that you can have something that is usually one way, but not always. So drag is in general sexual, but not always. And, gender is something that can be associated with sex, but not always. And so when we talk about these topics, I think it's really important for LGBT people to just accept that, there are instances where showing children drag or inviting them to drag shows is inappropriate. And it's okay to bite that bullet and to acknowledge that and to call that behavior out for what it is, which is inappropriate. When you have children dancing sexually, when you have them, exposed to performers who are dancing sexually, these would be examples, I think, of going over the line. I don't think that Drag Queen Story Hour is the most egregious example of this. Because again, I don't think that the fact that something is generally or perhaps associated with sex by some people is a high enough bar. So that's my reasoning. I think that some things are obviously inappropriate. We should just be okay with calling them out and not have to fight tooth and nail to defend every single point or take on ridiculous positions like drag is never sexual, because that's ridiculous. Everyone knows it is. And we can really have a conversation, a nuanced conversation about this if we're willing to.
Okay, now I'm going to throw it over to Rhizome.
Yeah, to me, it seems like we all agree exposing a kid to R or X-rated things could be bad, and we all seem to agree that there's ways of doing drag that don't include R-rated stuff, which would mean that drag itself is not an X-rated or R-rated thing, but just that it can be. We disagreed on how much certain sexual things are happening at drag shows, but we agree if those things were happening at an event that kids are invited to, it could be bad. To me, it seems that the issue is more TPUSA or libs of TikTok giving misinfo around what drag shows look like and what the nature of drag shows are. And if they didn't exist, we'd probably agree a lot more.
Joe Lewis?
I yield my time.
Remember, everybody, this is also wrapping up statements. So if you want to shout yourself out, this is the time to do it.
Oh, follow me at Rhizome, RHYZOHM on Twitch.
Yeah, follow me, Taftaj.
Turk?
None of your community is going to follow me despite how many panels I go on here. So
Or despite the fact that he actually fucking loaned a laptop to Dylan to be able to make the Ukraine trip happen. All you sons of bitches in Dylan's chat that aren't following the Turk.
That is true. I'm gonna throw it over to Jangles.
Black erasure's real.
Yeah. Hey, Tataj and Turk, if either or both of you would like to discuss one-on-one or a 3-person like solo group, that'd be awesome. I think it'd be fun. Yeah. So I would have much rather. I would have liked the conversation to go a little bit further than it did, or anywhere at all. Yeah. So I was not dissuaded from my original point that that queer in a lot of people's eyes is inherently sexual. That if you make something queer, the exact same action, but if you make it queer, people will find it inherently more sexual. I wasn't convinced of that. And yeah, I think the people who, especially like people like Lives of TikTok, TV USA, people like Alex, who make disingenuous claims about what goes on at the events, just make the conversation worse by saying that everything is inherently sexual because queer people are there. So yeah, I wasn't dissuaded. And Alex, honey, please understand that gender is not the same as sex. It's not inherently sexual. Please, for the love of God, learn that so we don't have a shit show of a conversation again.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it over to Alex Stein because I think it's appropriate.
Wow, Jangles is triggered so much, but I mean, I don't think you can use the word queer without describing who you're attracted to sexually, and you can't do that without defining their gender. So I get it. We just have to agree to disagree. And I just want to thank everybody, especially Joe. I learned that I'm demisexual because, you know, I have friends that I'm attracted to. They're good personalities. You know, I think Taj was very fair in her description of, you know, how drag, you know, story time or drag events can sometimes be sexual, and that they're, you know, overtly sexual a lot of the time, maybe not all of the time, maybe not 100% of the time, but a majority of the time. I think Rhizome was fair too. Now, James from the internet was not. He doesn't even know, you know, Joe Lewis's argument. So that guy's like, you know, I mean,
I love you, Prime Time.
You're as smart as a box of rocks, as they say, but that's fine. I don't understand. You know, I can see that you're doing really well with all those Spider-Man and all that movie memorabilia. I can tell you're living a very fulfilled life. So listen,
Come
this
by
is
and
what I'm
chat
saying.
about it.
James.
I wouldn't even waste my time. But what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, we need to protect kids. I think that there's a lot of sexual trauma that kids face, and it is a parental issue. I think their parents are exposing them. And there's a saying. It's like having a trans kid is a lot like having a vegan cat. It's not necessarily the kid making the decision. It's oftentimes the parents. Just like a cat doesn't want to be vegan. So that's the world we live in. Is that these parents are the ones that are providing, you know, the gender reassignment surgery or the gender hormone therapy. And that's why it's more likely for a kid to reassign their gender or have gender hormone therapy in Los Angeles than it is in Ohio. So it's not just because a kid says, oh, it's, you know, I'm able to be myself in these cities. No, it's because these are parents that are making the decision. So I think we have a huge parental issue, and that, you know, that's a problem with society today. Is a lot of parents are using their kids as collateral for clicks and views on TikTok and Instagram, and that was something that wasn't possible in the past. And when we talk about the sexualization of our children, when I was in school, our kids, my teacher didn't have a Facebook, my teacher didn't have an Instagram, so I didn't know about their sexuality. I didn't know that that was a big part of their lifestyle. So I just want to separate sex from children any way possible and protect them because they are more sensitive to sex than they are when they get older. So with that, I think it was a fun debate. I like CTV, and I really like to say, you know, Dylan, thank you for getting on the front lines and helping out Zelensky. I know you're doing a heck of a job. I know it's a very scary place. I see your videos. You look scared to death when you're hanging out with all those soldiers and shooting guns. I can't imagine, you know, you risking your life for us and that great content, that great YouTube content. So you're a real hero. Thank you, Dylan.
I know the ghost of Kiev is, you know, it turned out that wasn't real, but I'm the shill of Kiev, okay? And I will not back down. I'm going to throw it over to James.
I'd like to thank Alex Stein for finishing by agreeing with my point while simultaneously also calling me a retard. So take from that what you will. Your reminder here that if you're so convinced that drag is bad and bringing kids to drag hour is bad, maybe don't bring your kids to drag hour. Don't try to get the state to craft legislation to protect your child because you're bad at being a parent. Don't turn to the nanny state to do your job for you. And if you have ever complained about drag hour being something that sexualizes or grooms children, and every single one of your social media posts about it also doesn't include banning kids from, I don't know, gymnastics in tight leotards, children's beauty fashion pageants, taking your kids to church where we know what happens to them at church, well then chances are you're a hypocrite. And if you think that anything I've said is somehow too far off base and you want to school me, please feel free to come by anytime. Twitch.tv/James from the internet. Cheers.
Okay, and we're gonna wrap up with CTV.
It's been a good panel tonight, chat. It's been a good panel. Some of y'all get the sense of humor, some of y'all don't. But you know what? Ultimately, at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is entertain all you fine folks at home. So I want to thank everybody for coming and being a part of this Hippy Dippy Roundtable featuring the Hippy Dippy Champion. And you can find me over at twitch.tv/critically thinking veteran. And if you feel so inclined to have a rational discussion or to have a meme discussion, whatever your pleasure is, come join the Infinity Acre Wood. We got a lot of folks that are part of the community, and we love having good conversations.
Happy to have you all here. Thank you all for taking your Friday to come on to my show.